Welcome back, everyone. I'm John Dalton. Joining alongside me, Matthew Malcolm, still in the box as we take you through the second half of the action here at the IMB 6 Hours of Silverstone for round 2 of the championship. A big thank you to Jesse Lee, who is now on broadcasting duties, and of course yourself, Matt, for guiding us through the first half. It's been an exciting race so far, and with mixed weather now being thrown into the mix as well. Dry spells currently as the clock reads 3 hours as we get back underway. Teams, of course, not only battling just each other, but now the changing weather elements, which should keep strategy at the forefront of this intense competition. Buckle up, and we've got plenty more to come on RCI TV as drivers are now on their formation lap. Matt, getting ready for a bit of a mental reset for this second half of the race.
Yeah, it has to be a mental reset for this race here, as previously the conditions were absolutely torrential with the rain, but now with it dry, it gives them a clear head, clear opportunity for them to make the charge. If for people who are struggling in the wets, with it being fully dry at this time, it can give them full opportunity to make some good opportunistic sends through some of the corners here. But again, just because you can be a little bit more opportunistic doesn't mean you can be a little bit more bold. Because again, you still have to be careful. There's 3 hours left on the clock, so it all sort of depends what's going to happen over the next 3 hours.
3 hours on the clock indeed, and not too bold on those moves because we do have the live stewards also casting their eye over the action at the moment. 41 cars back on the server, everybody at the back of the pack scrabbling to get into their grid positions as they come down the Wellington Straight. The leaders already in the final corner, of course, of Cops. Woodcote, as they come out towards the pit entry on the right-hand side of the circuit. Veloce on the front row shared with Ren Velton. Bear in mind, the number 39 behind got an electric start at the green flag drop. And, of course, not forgetting the 255 competition alongside them as well. Visceral in the background with the sister Veloce car as we come to the line, getting ready for the green flag. Of course, the inside line favored into turn 1 up against the pit wall. We are green and we are racing here once again at Silverstone. Everybody jostling for position once again. Ren Velton dropping in behind, trying to get that magic single file as they head towards Maggots and Beckett's, and already darting left and right, trying to find any kind of opening that they can. And in a bit of a Veloce sandwich at the moment, the number 39 able to fend off the number 255 competition entry, as everybody I think has just about made it safely through, although maybe speaking too soon. I see yellow flags out in the middle of Beckett's. Somewhere there is a car off straight lining the corner as they come out onto the hangar straight. Not sure who that was, but everybody relatively safely through. We're nearly 4 wide in the back of the mid pack as the Brabham Motorsport entry trying to make up a position early on. That could be Stefan Trineski at the wheel at the moment. We'll have to wait for the timing gates to update as they head through the first sector split. Already the number 99, I think, out of sequence, showing a yellow flag down the hangar straight, so getting involved in an incident early on. And Visceral, oh, that's the Sky Simsport car, I think, hard into the wall on the Hamilton Straight already. That's going to be big front end damage, Matt, and that's not what you want starting the second half of this race so early on.
No, 3 hours to go. It's just not going to be the best case scenario for the guys at Sky Simsport. They're going to have to try and either fix the damage or go through what they can do with the damage limitations. But again, with 3 hours to go, it's best just to maybe just box early and just get it out and over with. Verstappen here gained 2 positions on to the rest of the pack here. He's made a good opportunistic here, but he's on free. It's almost 3 wide here as Aidan Walshingham goes on along the outside line here towards the final part of the lap. Tries to go for the switch back on the inside, but again, going around the outside line, trying to find a way to get right past that Asetek Lamborghini of the 44 with Tadley on the Lamborghini here. Gets a bigger gap onto there, which has puts him on ahead. But Lucas Whitehead has already got a clear gap behind him. He's just going to make sure he keeps that clean, keeps that consistent, along with Gromwald in the Rinwaldson 71 Aston Martin. They were the benchmark at Kyle Lamy. Maybe hopefully we can get them back into the thing with Andrew McWilliam with the Esports Academy almost going side by side with the Coach Dave Academy through the Beckett's and Maggots section here. Almost making it close between us. So it's all fair game in the minute. There has been a couple of taps here and there, but so far from the majority of our drivers here today, it's been quite clean for us.
Sensible slotting in to single file before they got to the twisty nature of the first sector. Here's the incident with the 99, 3 wide, coming out onto the hangar straight. There was a contact on the rear end of the car, sending the skid mark racing entry of Jan Drexler all the way into the wall. Left hand side there, the number 99 back underway, hasn't elected to come down the pit lane just yet, so damage probably manageable for the next hour in that BMW. Meanwhile, Samantha Tan Esports very wide as they come through the middle sector, just out of the club section, down Hamilton Straight. Let's catch a race replay, see what happened. It's a little bit too late, but possibly a hip and shoulder check from the Mustang ahead. That's Naudi currently at the wheel of the number 27 BF Esports car, and they've come to blows already earlier on in the SRO championships. They were fighting it out for the title heading into the Nürburgring 24 Hour just a few weeks ago. So as you and Jesse alluded to earlier, Matt, drivers on this grid are very well rehearsed in each other's kind of natures and how they drive. And big gains here for the RCI Bentley in this middle stage of the race. The number 769, Christopher Streppen, up into P7, already ahead of the number 73, Ren Veltman Ferrari.
Yeah, good opportunistic start for them. It's whether or not they can keep it up for the remainder of the race, because the Bentley is capable of doing what it needs to be done. But again, it really sort of depends on what the traffic's like on here. As we jump into Minar in the 255 competition, he's right in the back of Yardier. He's going to try and make sure he can find a right gap to slot into the podium positions. They got P2 last month. Let's see if they can be able to get themselves back into the podium positions again, as that can give them a really good strand for points to hold the P2 position. But right now, as the way that's standing, the 71 is still out ahead if they finish this position in P2.
Absolutely so. The 255 competition car having to put in some effort into this latter stage of the race. Of course, Philip Minar currently at the wheel, shares with Abdulaziz there, and that's a very fast driver in their own right. So possibly some moves coming later on in this session. Minar just kind of has to keep it clean and set up the start very well as they come to the checker flag. We can stick the second driver in and make some blistering pace. Here's the incident earlier on, the number 47 Sky Simsport entry kind of hustled a bit out of position as they came through the club section, and it was the West competition entry with a slight tag on the right rear, sending the Sky Simsport entry into the pit wall. But Baduano carrying on, the number 47 again, similar to the number 99, thinking they can manage the damage all the way to the end of this first stint. Of course, 65 minutes on the driver's stint timer will force them down the lane just at the 1 hour 55 mark. So still a long stint ahead. There's still an hour on the clock as we see the Mustang of Gutslav get very loose as they come out onto the Wellington Straight, nearly allowing the pack behind to catch up. We've got Szymanski in the number 32 Coach Dave Academy car. We've got Rates in the number 72, and Andrew McWilliams in the 777 also getting involved as they come out of the last turn. It's going to be a straight drag race towards the start-finish line. Williams versus Ren Veltman. That's a very formidable kind of matchup we've seen in the realm of the esports world, and the grunt of the Mercedes just able to pull ahead. Of course, the Ferrari 296 with its turbocharged engine takes a while to get spooled up, especially out of these slower to medium speed corners. So the Mercedes certainly prevailing in the exits there, Matt.
Yeah, definitely. With these Ferraris also running out of path side by side with the Mustang on the inside line, with Rangers is getting a much better line in there. But again, it's dry, so it gives them a chance to have better lines, better opportunistics for cars like the Mustang, cars like the Mercedes that might have more leg room and we're suffering in the corners, now have that better advantage in the corner lines as it's now starting to dry up, as it's fully dry now. As you can see with a lot of these other drivers here, they're keeping their lines nice and clean, so hopefully we'll see a little bit less of the track cuts in there. As we jump into the 72 with Reitez going into the part of the straight here, see what happens. It looks like there was a bit of door banging, a bit of a bumper banging there at some point there, but nothing too drastic there, John.
Yeah, nothing too drastic indeed. Kind of no harm, no foul, shall we say, on that one. Stewards will be casting their eye down over the race. So, you know, no escape from those guys up here in the box next to us. In the background, the Mustang up the inside of Finn Zimbel in the number 6. That's Gong in the 996 Mustang around the outside. He'll try the old up and under, but just catching the anti-cut curb on the inside hampers the traction for the drive, just boys entry, and you'll have to tuck back in behind the Lamborghini. But meanwhile, up ahead, it's kicking off between Gladius, that's Magnani in the car just ahead, Paduano with the damaged front end on the number 47. It gets very tight as they come down into the final sector of Brooklands through Luffield. Over the curb goes Sky Simsport wide. That brings Zimbel back into it in the number 6 Lamborghini now. Side by side, Gladius and VSR. It's going to be a drag race to the line, but the Aston with better drive off the corner manages to fend off, but the grunt of the Mustang in the background. Gong could size up into turn 1, but stays line of stern, not close enough to make a move yet. But as you said, Matt, of course, the change of weather, it being dry now. If you cast your eye to the top right hand side of the screen, we're cloudy for at least the next 30 minutes of today's race. Grip levels are optimum, so drivers are going to be loving this at the moment, and with the limited Pirelli tyre sets, they don't have to worry now about that. It can be fresh tyres all the way to the end for today, so it kind of dials that strategy element back a little bit. But clouds looming overhead, it could, change in a heartbeat here. Typical British weather as the MG ITJ setups of Del Fante goes wide now at the end of the hangar straight into Stowe, and that allows the Renvelten Ferrari through. Gladius sniffing up behind, very close indeed. It was the old switcheroo, tried to go around the outside. Renvelten couldn't get checked up in time. There was a hip and shoulder there, and the number 179 has to go wide, straighten up the steering to avoid any further contact. Hopefully that's not going to be a track limits warning. Meanwhile, the number 595 and the VSR getting involved as they head around the Albion farm corners towards Village. And that was a very brave move from Finn Zimbel, very well held on. And the Sky Simsport car ahead once again comes under pressure from the two cars behind. But what an outstanding move that was, Matt. I had a heart and mouth moment seeing these two go side by side as the Mustang grunt now prevails down into the Brooklands section, but the outside will become the inside. And bear in mind, the Sky Simsport car, big front end damage, is going to be quite slow through these corners. There's a hip and shoulder, there's a slide from Reinders up the inside again on Finn Zimbel, and Finn has just about managed to fend off that Mustang. But we said earlier, it's going to bring the manufacturers kind of on their heads a little bit. The Mustang, we know, works very well in the dry. Of course, we saw the Bentley earlier on struggling in the wet. That's now back into the mix as well at the bottom end of the top 10. So it's all hotting up, and with the server restart, Matt, gaps have closed up. So those fights that were such long distance, people chipping away at each other, we now find these trains beginning to form once again where drivers just can't kind of separate themselves because they're on such similar pace.
It's just hard to tell who's going to prevail at a lot of these battles, because before you saw a lot of these cars were struggling with the wets and how the conditions were settling in, but with it being dry now, it's all equal playing field. As a lot of these drivers here, they've trained for this. This is their bread and butter here. So with them going about in the dry set here, they'll be wanting to go all out as much as they can. There can be an element of strategy into this as well. So it all really sort of depends on how well they play out over the next 3 hours. They might decide to double stint the final stint to get the advantage on the time that you can gain on the very end. It might not be much, it might be considered enough to gain a few places here and there, but it's just an absolute 4-way, 5-way battles for a lot of these drivers here, trying to fight these crucial positions here. The BMW goes a little bit too wide there, allowing the Mercedes and the Williams Esports there for McWilliam to get on the side, but it just isn't enough to get side-by-side action here. He's got the draft going through the Wellington Straight here, but if he can hold it off, but the Mercedes looks to be gaining onto him. A little bit of a bump draft there as they go over towards the likes of Brooklands and into the Love Field. The BMW is still ahead at the minute, but it's whether or not the Mercedes can place his car well enough to get the full-on traction to get ahead of him by the likes of Stowe.
So, of course, the turbocharged BMW, quite talky out of corners, picks up quite well. So McWilliam will struggle to do what he did a few laps ago when he got past the Ferrari earlier on. But at the front of the field, though, Luke Whitehead has streaked ahead, 3.2 seconds to the good now, and we're not even 15 minutes into the race yet. You see the charging pack behind, headed up by Tobias Gronovol, Yaroslav Honzik in there, Philip Minar, as well as Kevin Today being pulled along at the back end in the Lamborghini. The sister Veloce car, the number 800 of Walsingham, is also in the mix there. And then a bit of a gap back to the Bentley of Christopher Streppen in P7, although he's got the Renvelten Ferrari behind, the number 73 of Leon Burnt, and with him brings a duo of Ford Mustangs in the form of Naudi and Hutchinson, who I mentioned earlier on, of course, battled it out over the N24 for SRO Honours just a few weeks ago. So these two are going to be very well rehearsed in how the other drives. And Sam Gaskell, after a good start in the early stages of the race, down to P11, finds himself in a bit of a no man's land after that stop and go penalty that was observed, Matt.
Yeah, a bit of the John Dalton zone, as you put it. It would just be in that gap there. So a little bit of action here with the Ferraris and Mustangs here, with Del Fante trying to get around the likes of Saita for the 256 Mustang here. He's going to try and find a better spot for it, but it's still a little bit on the side-by-side action here, as Jesse's getting excited over all the action and all the drama that's happening the last 15 minutes that might have occurred. But the Ferrari just doesn't have the legs for the end of the straights here. It just, the turbo just likes to puff out at the end of it. We go have a look at the Williams Academy here. It seems to be side-by-side action with the Mustang. A little bit of door bang here. It looks to be at the Lufsfield over to Woodcote, John.
Yeah, it looks like the kind of beginning of the Hamilton straight there. That's the number 24 that we just observed there. A little bit more wounded after the start of this second half. And we're not even 15 minutes in yet, and everybody's taking lumps out of each other like it's the last 15 minutes to get through. And Jesse Lee in our ears getting very excited over all of the action at the moment. And Walsingham looks very close to the back of Kevin today's Lamborghini, the number 44 Visceral car, but not close enough to make a move up to the bottom end of the straight, like you say. The Ferrari kind of runs out of puff in the turbocharged nature of that car, and like I said earlier on, it does take a while to get spooled up as well. So the initial kind of out of the corner quite slow towards the top end of the circuit, also relatively kind of hard to make passes there. But it's the line of Aston Martins at the moment, P1 to 4, certainly the stronger manufacturer on the calendar at the moment. And just had a look towards the top right hand side of the screen, Matt. Looks like we could be in for a shower in about 30 minutes time, which of course the pit window would still be roughly about 20 minutes away. So it will bring that element of strategy back into this race once again. And I'm wondering how many cars, of course, took setup changes before we got back underway when they saw the dry conditions. Were they hoping that it was going to stay for the next 3 hours? But of course, being Britain, it's never ever going to be dry for more than a few hours or so. I think the number 91 has just retired to the pit lane. It could be wrong, but the yellow flag out and then disappeared from the track map. So do some digging on what happened there.
Yeah, so just unfortunate they have gone and retired. But I was just going to mention, with the rain in 30 minutes, it is very light rain that's going to occur. So with track conditions like this, it might not even matter with the guys being sticking out onto dry tires if it's going to be like this for the next while, because it does sometimes take a while for the track to switch from optimum over to the likes of damp or even wet. But again, it really sort of depends on what plays out for the next 15-20 minutes. We'll see what the weather's going to be like by then. A little bit of action here with a four-way fight going into the Maggots and Beckett section here. Still in a single train here with the likes of from the Bentley all the way up to the Mustang. So it's good racing here so far with these four. Hopefully we can see some good action going on further along the race with these four.
Yeah, good racing indeed. And it's a good time to remind you what everybody is, of course, fighting for here. It's a €7,000 prize pool with us here at RCI, and non-cash prizes also being given from the likes of Moser Racing and IMB Racewear, who are the title sponsor, shall we say, of the IMB 6 Hours of Silverstone today. As the gaggle of cars begin to form, I'm going to hold off my sentence as Gladius and LFM go toe-to-toe through the slower section of Club. And Gladius on the outside, Matteo Sinotti opens up the door. That's Del Fante on the inside as well. Got to give the room for the Aston to come back onto the circuit, and that's brought the number 20 Ferrari around the outside. There's contact. The number 20 has to straighten up the steering, can't make the corner out into no man's land, has to find the gap in the grass to come back on, because trying to brake and jump over the grass isn't ideal. And manages to keep the car alongside and up the inside of the McLaren, the number 177 there of Boosing, manages to pull alongside and ahead as they come out onto the Wellington Straight. But I think the McLaren is going to be sniffing for that position after the hip and shoulder through the far sector of Abbey and Farm. But the number 20 back into line of stern. There's dust being kicked up to the right hand side. Somebody else is off through the slower section of Brooklands. Not sure who that was. The number 62 possibly there. That's Stefan Trineski in the Brabham Motorsport Ferrari. Maybe catch a race replay on how that came to be, but I can only imagine a very kind of ambitious move going into Brooklands in that big gaggle of cars, trying to defend from Conrad Ciata in the Mustang, went to the inside, then pulled back over the nose of the Mustang. That's not an ideal move to make, and that's a crucial example of why you should always hold your line in a braking zone, because you never know, the car alongside may be a bit more ambitious than you on that middle pedal, and suddenly you find yourself with a nose of a Mustang buried into the rear wheel of your Ferrari. But as I was saying, the prize pool, €7,000, non-cash prizes from both Moser Racing and IMB Racewear, and Moser Racing will be giving away 1 sequential shifter and 1 handbrake to 2 lucky teams that finish all 6 races in the calendar. So again, that's a random kind of prize giving. It's definitely worth sticking around for and seeing the 6 hours out, even if you are down on your luck. IMB Racewear also providing prizes for the top 3 teams, starting off with the first place receiving a limited pair of 6-hour Esports Series Champion Edition gloves. I'm being told these are a limited run, so quite exclusive to the team that do finish first at the end of the championship. Second place will receive a pair of stealth gloves, again for up to 3 drivers, and third will receive a pair of SRS2 socks, plus a £30 IMB Racewear gift card. And additionally, pole position will also earn a £20 IMB Racewear gift card per round. So again, the fastest driver through, or the fastest team should we say, through qualifying on that one. And today, of course, it was the Veloce car, the number 55, I believe, on that one. So an additional £20 to them. And also IMB Racewear are providing our sister championship, the 6-hour community series, with some prizes as well for the first time in RCI history. So if you fancy your chances, you can head on over to the website, that's racerci.com, get your team signed up for that one as they head into round 3. Of course, you can still have your chances at that series, and it's a fantastic series. I've raced in round 1, had to miss round 2. Probably very lucky. It was quite a soggy one here at Silverstone for the community series, Matt.
More waterlogged, as I want to say, on that part there. It was constant rain, even had a spell of heavy rain as well, quite like what our drivers had here at the start of their 3 hours of the race. Again, it's dry right now, but with rain coming in within the next 30 minutes, we'll see what happens with the likes of the weather, because again, with that randomness factor, anything can happen with our drivers here today. As the likes of Honzik is able to get to the back, but he's also yielding the bit, allowing the 255 competition to gain a little bit more of advantage, trying to see if he can peek his nose, because after all, it is a 5-way battle for P2, with Luke Whitehead taking full advantage of that gap he's got, with a 4.7 second gap between him and the rest of that pack there.
Yeah, it's a magical thing, isn't it, for Whitehead? Everybody squabbling behind him just allows him to extend his lead out even more. And now Aidan Walsingham tries around the outside of Kevin today for the Visceral Esports car there into Brooklands, not able to make it work around the outside. It's a very kind of tricky section to really get an overtake done through. You've got to set the move up around the outside of Brooklands almost and kind of hold it into Luffield up the inside to be able to get the path done. And that's going to bring Christopher Streppen now closer to these guys as they hamper each other through the final sector. The Bentley just behind, 1.4 seconds to the good. Tobias Groenewold has managed to escape up the road a tiny bit just ahead of Jaroslav Honzik and Philip Minard in those chasing pair of Aston Martins as well. Kevin today being very greedy with the track taken to the grass as it comes through Maggots and Beckett's. And Aidan Walsingham there trying to make most of the slipstream once again. down the hangar straight. I just don't think, Matt, you've probably driven the Ferrari a little bit more than I have, but the limited run I have in the Ferrari, it's very slow to try and fire out of a corner where, you know, the naturally aspirated Lamborghini ahead picks up quite well. It's a very similar kind of car design, mid-engine, quite low to the floor, so aerodynamically it can be roughly similar, but it's that turbo of the Ferrari that does just hamper it as it tries to come out of the corners and get down to the end of the straight.
It's basically its weakest point with the Ferrari. It's just its turbo itself, just not given enough power just when it needs to be. You'll have a look at the replay here with the 99. Here, see what happens. Oh, there's a big contact there from the BM. Is that the BMW or is that the Mustang? I can't see. Couldn't see there from that point there.
Skid mark racing car.
Skid mark, yes, yeah. So big hit there from that point there, enough to get them off the track, but it seems to be back on track and back easily there. But the stewards will definitely be looking into that. The stewards will definitely looking into that and see what happens from that incident there, because that was a pretty heavy hit for that Ferrari there, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly so. It was a hefty hit from the BMW onto the Ferrari. Meanwhile, towards the kind of mid-pack, shall we say? It sounds really strange saying the mid-pack when we're into the P24s here. This is the number 20 still in the fight with Reinders in the 595. Magnani ahead in the 201. Gladius Aston trying to defend from the Ferrari. Delfante has managed to escape up the road just a little bit in the number 179, and of course ahead of him is the sister car to Magnani in the 202. So could see a few maybe team orders coming in here if Sinotti can back up Delfante a little bit into the sister Gladius car. Could act as a rear gunner if they make their way through the number 179. But line of stern at the moment through Maggots and Beckett's in the background. The Renvelten for future car, the Rustys themed livery. Probably one of my favourite ones on the grid for the season, should we say. Hunts down the number 51 Ferrari just ahead, trying to get alongside, and there's contact. There's a brief bit of contact. Both drivers holding on to that one somehow, and around the outside will go sour at the end of the hangar straight, but not able to get alongside. But that could have ended so much worse, Matt. As we know, the smallest of touches in ACC really do play havoc, and we're going to get a view from the sky this time. The number 74 just got the overlap on the 51. The 51 tried to cover it off, probably realized that the front end of that Aston was overhanging the rear wheel of that Ferrari, and kind of no harm, no foul, should we say, but that could have come out very different as everybody checking up now into the village section. Sinotti trying to fend off Delfante, and in the meanwhile, that brings his teammate into the realm as well. The number 201 now, Gladius, alongside each other. Heading out onto the Wellington Straight, though, Delfante does get the position in the number 179. He can set his sights onto the back of Conrad Ciata just ahead in the number 256 LFM car. But in the background, that number 20 Ferrari looks very quick after the earlier on-off that we saw, Matt. Certainly coming back at this Gladius duo ahead now.
Yeah, but you can't disregard what the Aston can do with its legs. It can really stretch them far compared to the legs of the Ferrari. So it's going to be a very... we'll see what happens here, because with the Aston, it's a really good midpoint here with a lot of this, a lot of the cars here, especially for the series. But yeah, I just think that the Aston will probably have the better legs on the Ferrari.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Aston should be that much better than the Ferrari on this one. But Luke, go ahead. So we are back with you now. More technical difficulties plaguing us ever so slightly as we jump from the servers of the RCI Discord. Sinotti back ahead, still ahead of the number 20 Ferrari, fending off now for his teammate, the number 201, as we go three wide out onto the Hamilton Straight. Very briefly, Delfante and Renvelten and Ciata all kicking off as they head through the farm section. It's very tight. It's such a one-line kind of corner. It's you've really got to dial in the kind of steering angle and pray that the front end sticks. Delfante up the inside now of Conrad Ciata in the number 256. The number 179 Ferrari, Matt, really making moves in the middle stages of this stint.
Yeah, but don't count out the Gladius of the 201 yet, as they're going side by side. There's a car veering off the left-hand side there. Well, I'm not sure who that was, or if they gone off. I think that was the other Gladius car that was trying to go a little bit wide on the other side there. There looks like there was contact. We'll see if we can get a replay of that, which we will. Going back over to the chapel section. See what happens here. Oh, a little bit of that's a bit of a bump draft there and a half, almost causing a collision with the Gladius car. So it's really good to see them still in the competition and not in the wall. Going through Cops Corner now, we can see with the Gladius cars still taking full advantage of where they are. They got to try and see whether or not they can pick off the two Mustangs here, because the Aston, it does have the legs to be on pace with the Mustang, and also has slightly better cornering than the Mustangs themselves.
Yeah, Mustang certainly struggling in the corners. An absolute rocket ship in a straight line, though, as we see Hubert Szymanski here, the number 32, making a position up on Remy Papin in the number 49 Aston, although Papin looks to try and come back as they head down to towards Vale, and of course through Club they will go. The Ferrari getting the move done and signed and sealed and delivered, as there's more contact between the number 20, that's Sinotti, and Luca Ben coming through the Stowe corner down towards again Club section. The Aston on the inside is going to shoehorn that Ferrari out the long way around. The number 20 will go, and there's more contact as they come off the corner. The Ferrari says, right back at you, I'm having none of this, as they come up towards Abbey. The Ferrari has to go the long way around using all of the entry curb. There's more contact in the middle of the corner, and the Gladius car is going to have the inside line into Abbey. The last of the late breakers, the McLaren in the background of Boosing and Finn Zimbel also closing up as they take more lumps out of each other, heading towards the loop. The Ferrari on the inside, Gladius goes wide, tries to do the old up and under. Sinotti down a position, and now the McLaren, the number 177 of Boosing getting involved, shoehorning out Sinotti over the exit curb and into the grass, and Finn Zimbel is just kind of sat back there, front row seats to this whole party, thinking if there's a gap somewhere, I am going to take this one, as Sinotti goes wide through the Brooklyn section into Luffield. Very, very close indeed, but Finn Zimbel rubbing his hands together, tucking onto the back of the Aston Martin, and everybody sorts themselves out by the time we get back to the start-finish line. Luca Ben, the gainer there, boosting up a position as well, and Sinotti down 2 during that lap. So not a good lap for the Gladius Competitions car, and Sam Gaskell, meanwhile, towards the back of Hutchinson, wants to try and get another position off the Ford Mustang, finds himself with the Aston Martin of Nürnberger behind as well. And I'm just thinking Naldi has managed to get past Hutchinson somewhere, and Naldi is 3 seconds clear of Hutchinson. That order was reversed just a few laps ago, I'm sure. Unless
no, I think it's been like that for a while now, John. I think it was they took the position early and then they've kept it on for quite a while now. But Sam Gaskell, he had a pretty unfortunate start of the race, but he is climbing back up on the tower here, almost getting within the top 10 position here. So hats off to the likes of Visceral Esports there, as they're trying to make their way back up onto the grid here. But he's got the Aston behind and he's got the Mustang up front, so it's all a matter of what he can do to get the drafting off from the Mustang and try and take full advantage of the cornering speeds that he can gain from that. You can see on the track map here, there's a couple of snakes here about and everywhere, so but the gap's now opening out towards the rest of the grid. It's all comes to play of what's going to happen when that rain comes down in 30 minutes.
Yeah, rain's still due in 30 minutes time roughly. Still waiting for another weather update to appear on our screen. Keep your eye on the top right hand side of the screen, because that will probably update way before we notice here, sometimes up in the box. But still rain in 30. Of course, pit stops are roughly about 30 minutes or so away, so it's going to be that real split second kind of cool on tire choices. Like you say, Matt, you don't want to be out on the wrong tire, but at the same time you need to make that tire call in that forced pit stop, essentially, when the driver time is up. And you really have to kind of foresee what's going to happen, because 2 trips down pit lane, not ideal within quick succession of each other. So you're either going to have to take a gamble on the wets, try and keep them alive until the track kind of wets up and those tire temps come down again, or you're going to have to go out on dries and maybe just overinflate them and stick with them for the remainder of the stint. Because at this late stage, if this was earlier on in the race, you could probably take the gamble knowing that you're going to get the time back later on. But by the time the rain comes, we're going to be 2 hours away from the end, and that's going to be, not a good time to try and make up positions late on. Sam Gaskell, though, up ahead of the Mustang now. Hutchinson down a position and possibly down another position as the dynamic motorsports car, the 111 of Nürnberger, now sizes up the back end of that Mustang. And Mustang, again, not too competent in the corners. The Aston maybe the more favoured car in that sense, but the legs on the Mustang certainly stretching as all 8 cylinders begin to wind themselves up. A high revving, naturally aspirated V8. You can already see the gap that's kind of extended out to the number 38 ahead. Gets to the Brooklyn section, and that Aston closes in. So we've got one giant game of cat and mouse on our hands essentially at this point, Matt, for the next few laps until Nürnberger finds his way through.
Certainly is. And if you can't get him on the track, you can certainly get him in the box. Because again, it really sort of depends on what the gamble is when the rain comes in within the next 30 minutes. We see a yellow flag there for car 24. Or there, it's kind of stopped on track. It looks like they're getting off again, so that's a good on them. It looks like there's some severe contact along the front there. I wonder if we got a replay there, which we do. Thanks to you, Jesse. So we're just looking onto the part here. We'll see what's going to happen. A little bit of a tap there from the Ferrari. It just looks like there was a bit of extra contact from a couple of other cars. So, been unfortunate for the Mustang there, but with 5-star racing, hopefully they can get themselves back onto there, because it's still all to play for. There's still points all across the board here, John, today, and it all really sort of depends on whether or not you want to keep going and keep pushing onwards. But as I've just seen on the top right hand corner, it is light rain that is going to be increasing in 30 minutes. So I wonder if the light rain is going to be going long enough for the dry tires to keep holding on just that little bit longer.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's that awkward thing that you have to make a call in the next kind of 10 minutes or so. I mean, it's still about 20-25 minutes away from coming down the lane for that 65-minute stint timer that we keep mentioning. So rain in 10 takes you to about 2 hours 15. You've then got rain in 30, which would take you bang on to where you were forced to stop essentially on that 65-minute timer. So all eyes towards the kind of front, should we say, of the weather heads over the horizon. Very low wind speed here today, though, 1 kilometre an hour. So once it does blow in, it's probably here for the foreseeable. So again, it's that tricky call. Do I want to ruin a set of wet Pirellis before it's ideal, or do I want to take those dry tyres and just see where it kind of goes? I mean, it's not too much of a speculation to maybe pull yourself in a bit earlier, just top the fuel off, reset that stint time, and see how long you can go on this initial set of tyres. Again, you could find yourself, an extra 5-10 minutes up the road compared to everybody else. Pull yourself in when the track is wet, and then obviously go out when the wet tyres are in that magical window, as Finn Zimble still hasn't made any progress towards the back of Sinotti, although Sinotti with a 5-second penalty to be served in the next pit stop. Looks like the stewards have evaluated, of course, the opening lap on the second half of the race, and that's some penalties that we're seeing down the timing tower on the left-hand side of the screen. Matt, have you got any word about any of them?
I can give, well, there's quite a few of them so far, so we'll start going down by the order. So we'll start with the first one here, lap 1, turn 3, including the 799, 24, 46 and 202. There's a 5-second penalty for the 799 for avoidable contact. Turn 3 as well, 24 and 52. Warning for car 24 of avoidable contact and rejoining. 5-second penalty for the car 202 in a lap 1, turn 4, involving a couple of other cars. Lap 1, turn 4, involving the 201 and 6, and our 5-second penalty for unsafe rejoining, gaining an advantage of track. Lap 1, turn 4 again, 595 and the 52, 10 seconds for the 595 for failure to apply caution, leading to avoidable contact. Another one on turn 6, which was the 99, 25, 776, and 74 is a racing instant. But again, we're back to another 10-second penalty between at lap 1, turn 10 with the 47 and 1. So that's the number 1 getting 10 seconds for avoidable contact. We have another few more warnings. So the 202, 256, the 256 getting a warning for avoidable contact. And there's up to 5 seconds for multiple warnings at lap 9, turn 9. And a few other ones for hard racing, but we do have another 2 more penalties here with lap 9, turn 16, with the 62 and the 256, 10 seconds for 256 for avoidable contact. And again at lap 10, turn 2, between the 1 and the 138, there's a 5-second penalty for the 138 for avoidable contact. And that is currently all the penalties from lap 1 up until now.
Some very long penalties there involving multiple cars across the board, and as you can see down the left hand side of your screen, anybody with the number in the red box next to their name does have to serve a penalty. So we're relatively clean up to the top kind of 14 cars before we start seeing them with the number 138, of course the number 1, the number 50, the number 256, sorry, the 595 and the 201 on that tiling tower at the moment. And if you are new to ACC, you don't quite know how these penalties will be served, so the car will be held an additional amount of time during the pit stop. So fuel and tyres typically takes 30 seconds in the box, and for people like McCovkin, the number 138, they'll be held for 35 seconds. So that should promote, of course, McWilliam up a position. Gutslav, if he can get close enough, might be able to benefit off that one as well. And Marco Jonkers, of course, 10 seconds to his name. He'll go tumbling down the order in the number 1 West Competition Racing entry. So should be some movers and shakers across the board once the rain rolls in or the driver's stint timer expires, whichever happens first, as Walsingham certainly looking very racy towards the back of today, although still can't find his way around the number 44 Lamborghini at this current stage. Just kind of holding station. I mean, they're both making good progress, but Christopher Streppen's gap behind it was about 1.4 seconds, I believe, during this early stage of the stint. It's now down to 0.8 seconds, so Christoph is closing in. So very soon, Matt, this could be a bit of a three-way fight. And I mean, it's not out of the question to say that, you know, the number 73 and the 27 of Burnt and Naudi just behind there, just in the back of the shot there. You can see him as they cascade through Maggots and Beckett's, and could even become essentially a four-way fight up until P5.
Yeah, it also really depends on what's going to happen, whether they take advantage from the pit stops or getting it through on the track. Again, with about just under 20 minutes, I want to say, or yeah, just over 20 minutes, we'll see some driver changes. We'll see some things going wrong. It looks like the track's already deteriorating already. The track is still dry, but it's already switched to a fast track. So we might see the progression over to a wet track might come quicker than what some of the drivers may anticipate, John. So we'll still play it by ear as to what's going to happen over the next 10 minutes. But it looks like the track's already deteriorating, and not a single drop has come.
Yeah, very interesting. Good spot there, Matt, actually, on the top right-hand side of your screen. If you wonder where Matt got that information from, it's a weather kind of widget up there. Track already down to fast, which is interesting. I think this happened once before in an RCI race that I was casting, and it's something to do with the humidity in the air. There's like enough humidity to kind of deteriorate the track, but not enough that it shows kind of on the windscreen of the cars. So wondering how many drivers are going to be aware of that coming into these corners. Grip levels aren't going to be what they might expect as they come through some of these high-low corners, and we already saw Walsingham a little bit wide earlier on in the lap. So hopefully somebody has spotted that for the teams and drivers down on the grid. But rain is kind of imminent any given moment, so cast your eye to the top right hand side. Again, wind speed picked up another kilometre in the last 5 minutes or so. Track temperature 22 degrees, air temperature at 17 degrees, so relatively cool at the moment in Silverstone. So it should hopefully keep these dry Pirellis alive that a little bit longer through the stint. And Matteo Naudi still not finding a way past the Renvelten Ferrari ahead, the number 73. That gap stayed fairly honest so far, and Sam Gaskell behind 1.8 seconds to the good is the Aston Martin, the number 45 chasing down as they come down the hangar straight. Burnt is forced to go defensive, but Naudi just can't get the overlap on that Ferrari, so they kind of hold line of stern once again. Naudi probably sensibly following the Renvelten car, knowing that it's going to be better in the corners, and maybe using it to try and tow up to the back of Christoph Verstappen, who has made a mistake at some point during the last lap. That gap that was down to 0.8 seconds, now up to 1.6 for Christoph there. So either Walsingham and Today have really put their foot down and, you know, pulled out a bit on that last lap, or Christoph's been caught out by something, and that's offset him ever so slightly in his crusade towards the front. Meanwhile, we've got a bit of a three-way fight forming here between Papan, McCovkin and McWilliam. Say the Williams Academy car certainly doing very well today. The 777 looks to the inside into the village, can't find a way alongside the Aston, and everybody line of stern here, but this one's going to be certainly interesting. McCovkin, of course, with that 5-second penalty, Matt, it's almost a bit of a, you know, delaying the inevitable at this point. You know, as soon as McCovkin's down the lane, that's 5 seconds straight away gone from his kind of gap to McWilliam. That would shuffle him down just ahead of the Mustang behind of Gutslav in the number 42. So, you know, you don't want to delay it too much, but at the same time, you don't want to make it easy, especially if you think that the number 138 has more pace than that Mercedes behind.
Yeah, but I think for the likes of McCovin, it's just be a matter of track position. It's the second he yields, he's going to be in that window where he could easily be overtaken with his penalty stop. So you saw for that gap there, it was literally just under 5 seconds now. So it'll be a matter of just trying to manage that gap and just trying to make sure that you don't get cut off with the 5-second penalty. But something I did notice as well is Luke Whitehead had a lead of 4.7 seconds at the start of the race. That's now halved. It's essentially nearly halved at this point. So the 71 Rinwald team has certainly picked up the pace when it comes to the likes of Luke Whitehead. I think he's lost the 2 seconds over the period of about 3 or 4 laps. So I don't know if it's small mistakes that he's making or whether he didn't anticipate the track going from optimum to fast that quickly. But the gap is closing down, and Yardia is also half a second behind, with Minar also being 1.8 seconds to the gap. So the top 4 spots are closing in towards the likes of Luke Whitehead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the gap, like you say, is already down to Gronewold, 2.8 seconds. At the last time, he gets a big send there from McCovkin in the old crisscross as he tried to throw it up the inside, just not being able to settle the car once again as they got to the corner to get it back underway. And we see wipers on the cars now. The rain has come in. It's very, it must be very light, because I can't even see it on the TV cams, but just noticed the number 49 wiper going there. I think McCovkin does drive in bonnet view, so no wiper on that Aston Martin, and no wiper on the McWilliam car. There we go, the slowest kind of first wipe, should we say, of the windscreen for McWilliam. It's almost, you don't want to wipe the screen at all in this kind of weather. It's not even hindering the windscreen at the moment on these cars. So I think we're going to be safe for at least another lap or two before the rain does open. If you look to the
there it comes.
top
There
right,
comes the wipers.
yeah, we do have clouds in the background of the rain, so it's not that traditional rain symbol with a cloud with the drops coming out. It's 2 clouds with drops coming out of the front one, so it is super light at the moment, and drivers are going to have to be on their toes to not get caught out. If there is a sudden change in the water coming down, Matt, it could make some corners very treacherous. Walshingham, though, this is the best chance he's had all race as they bang doors heading towards the end of the hangar straight. Today just about prevails, although Walshingham trying to do the old up and under, and Today just parked the number 44 perfectly on the apex. No move going on at the moment as they come into the slower section of the club after Vale. And still Walsingham staring at the back of the Lamborghini, probably getting even more frustrated than he already had done before in the previous lap. Wipers much faster this time by as they head through Abbey and Farm, and I think Walsingham's only chance at getting past that Lamborghini on the circuit was just then that we caught. And Christoph Verstappen, of course, looks much closer in the background, the number 769 Bentley, and with him has got that Ferrari in tow, the number 73 Renvelten entry. So this could become a four-way fight, although I think a lot of this could be settled on the pit lane, Matt, and especially coming out of the pit lane to which drivers have chosen which tyres, because that is the crucial phase at the moment. Everybody's kind of talking about it. I can imagine. I'd love to listen to some I'd love to listen to some streams at the moment to see what is truly going on behind the scenes between these teams. But Luke Whitehead's lead is tumbling down 1.3 seconds now. The number 55 Veloce car really struggling at the moment, Matt.
I think it's just a matter of just overcooking the tires, overdoing it. I think that's what the issue is. He's got himself the early lead, but it's costing him fast. He's got 10 minutes until, or 15 minutes until the end of his stint timer. So it's only a matter of time before the other two cars catch up. And the likes of the 71 Rinwald team, they've already got themselves a bit of a bigger gap against the likes of Hunsig. So again, it really sort of depends on what's going to happen over the next 15 minutes with more rain coming in. The track's already now greasy. The wind's picking up as well. So we're going to see a bit more light rain coming in the next 30 minutes. So it might be best to take the wet tires coming in for the next stint, because it could just eventually keep it to the mixture of damp, wet conditions.
Yeah, tyre temps are falling at the moment. And an interesting thing, I've just tuned into Luke Whitehead's stream very briefly to see what was going on. Tyre pressure's looking relatively low on his HUD, and Walsingham, meanwhile, has found his way past Kevin today in the number 44. Walsingham now up into P5 in that Ferrari. I'm kind of betting he's done it down the hangar straight somewhere, because he looks super fast coming through. Let's have a long replay here. This takes us all the way back to Maggots and Beckett's as they snake their way through. You can see the rain coming down, so grip levels have changed probably from the last time drivers went through this section, and both drivers keeping it on the straight and narrow. Looks like today may have dropped a wheel ever so slightly as he ran out of Chapel onto the hangar straight, but it's not going to be big enough to draw Walsingham into the wake of that car. And both drivers into Stowe. Looks like Kevin today got massive wash as he turned in. The front end just slipped away from him, and that brought the number 800 back at him by the time they got down to Vale and Club. And around the outside went Walsingham. Of course, the outside then becomes the inside for the next couple of turns, and no harm, no foul. There's a wiggle from the number 44 as he jumped on the power, and that is the move signed, sealed, and delivered by the time they got to the Hamilton straight. So very clean and fair racing, very patient racing as well from Walsingham. He's been staring at the back of the Lamborghini for some time now on that one. But I was saying Luke Whitehead's tyre pressure's relatively low on his stream at the moment. They're dipping down below now the 26s. They were just inside the 26s, 26.1.2, but of course the track going to greasy, temperature falling out of these Pirellis at the moment. Groenewold looking so much stronger on the brakes than Whitehead, and Whitehead actually driving in bonnet cam, having trouble getting the windscreen wiper turned on, which is now turned on his stream. So maybe a bit of a bug from ACC there. And now back into the cockpit cam goes Luke Whitehead, and we should be all safe and good. So maybe, Matt, Luke Whitehead not used to driving in bonnet view, having to do a few laps to see through what little water was pooling on the windscreen of the car, and that's just been enough to then bring Tobias Groenewold into it for the Renvelten number 71.
Yeah, Groenewold has definitely got the better advantage here, but what people have to remember is if you're driving on under pressure tyres here, you could run the risk of getting a puncture if you dip on those curbs a bit too harshly with these cars, because again, it's all about trying to maximize the time without hindering yourself, and getting yourself a puncture at this stage of the race is certainly a deal breaker when it comes to trying to go in long on this. Groenewold is trying to maybe have a look at the inside line there, going into the likes of Brooklands, but he isn't able to find a spot there for him to sit side by side. But going through the likes of Lovefield and Woodcock, it seems like he's got a better advantage on the exit point there for Luke Whitehead, as he's able to secure that spot just now a few more corners around. But Yardier is 1.5 seconds behind, but he does have a better advantage as he's got a much cleaner gap than, say, the likes of Groenewold if he's trying to make that pass done. A few other places, looking down through the timing here, it seems like a few other people here are closing in those gaps there with the likes of Verstappen, as the most notable one has dropped his 1.6 or 1.8 second gap all the way down to less than half a second. So there could be a chance for him to take full advantage on the 44 Lamborghini, but with everyone else around here, with the time penalties also applying in here as well, it's all or nothing here for the remainder of the race.
Yeah, all or nothing indeed, I would say. On this one, Gronewold tucking into the slipstream down the hanger straight. The weird bump at the end always catches people off, especially in these mixed conditions. Soaring at the wheel as the rear end steps away as they pull down towards Vale. Not close enough to get alongside and make a lunge, and I think it will be a very clumsy move if Gronewold does attempt anything, as the conditions aren't ideal, especially off the racing line. It's going to be a bit more greasy than the racing line. Of course, curbs are going to be kind of getting a lot slicker in the next couple of laps as well. So interesting things to note. Lines and driving styles may be changing over the next few laps or so. Kevin today, though, will find himself as the move comes in from Gronewold up the inside into the village section. The rear end steps away. Whitehead manages to keep the outside line, becomes the inside, the old up and under. No gap there for Gronewold to find, and Whitehead parking it perfectly on the apex, and the two Aston Martins go toe-to-toe once again. Veloce versus Ren Velton. Down to the Brooklyn section they go. Gronewold chooses the outside line, thinks he can go outside to inside. Whitehead nearly overcooking it on the brakes, managing to draw up in time. Number 55, a miracle of the Ren Velton car, and in the background, like you say, Jaroslav Honzik coming into the mix as well. That gap down 0.3 already in this last lap. So Honzik really has to kind of get a shift on now to help his teammate try and distract Gronewold in the attack towards Luke Whitehead, and already missing the apex of Copse turn 1. That's going to hamper the run through Maggots and Beckett's ever so slightly for Ren Velton, but still Luke Whitehead mirror full of the Aston Martin, and this one of course going to be settled on pit lane this time by drivers will be forced to stop as the driver's stint time does expire. Of course, the 65 minutes, we're currently at 64 minutes as they come out onto the hanger straight. So these drivers pushing to the absolute... No, I'm being told no. 55 minutes. Yeah, sorry, I'm too used to the 65 minutes. But yeah, we are 10 minutes away from pit stops, roughly.
Yeah, yep, we are 10 minutes away, so pit stops are going to be happening quite soon. So we'll see what happens within the next 10 minutes, see what happens everything from there. But it looks like Visceral got past off Strepet. He's now puts himself down to P8. So that puts a slight disadvantage for the Bentley going through into the next few laps there, especially going into the pit lane there. But Gronewold still in the back of Luke Whitehead there. But Yardair is also closing in that gap there. He's trying to put the pressure as much as he can. He's trying to maybe to overdrive the car just a little bit more than he should be. A little bit of a slide there from the Melton car, and have to put the pressure on for Honzik to be able to get on the back of him, trying to be able to put a little bit more pressure into the likes of the 71 Aston Martin. But safe to say it's still status quo for that point there as we round off near towards the end of the stint here. As they go finish off their stints there, I will be signing off for the remainder of the race, and I'll pass you over to Kevin Boss, who will give you an excellent commentary status from there.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Yeah, very excited to be here for these last 2 hours and 4 minutes of this race. Next, of course, your lead commentator, John. Malcolm, thank you very much for holding the fort for these last couple hours, especially in that long interval. But yeah, this has been a great race to see, even with some of the issues that we've had, especially with this restart, starting in the dries, in optimum track condition, now going into greasy with the wet weather really coming in. This could go anywhere, especially if some of the teams decided to go for a more wet setup, don't you think, John?
Yeah, it's going to be a very hard call, wasn't it? You know, some 57 minutes ago when we got back underway on the grid, of course, cars weren't conformed to parc ferme status, so drivers could make setup changes as they saw fit, and probably with clouds on the horizon for the next half an hour. I can only imagine some drivers kind of deviated away from that wet setup back towards a bit of a drier setup. So again, as the weather turns, Kevin, we're going to see how these cars kind of evolve through their status. Of course, will anybody be daring enough to take a set of wets? The rain is just too light at the moment, although getting heavier in the next 10 minutes. So could be a thing coming into this next stint. Drivers are going to have to kind of think on their toes. I think an upset of, an overpressure, should we say, set of dries would be the far better call to take at the moment, as Ronald sliding around the slowest sections and Honzik looming in as well. And in the background, the number 255 competition car, Philip Minard, he's been in a bit of a no man's land from the green flag, even in the first half of the race before we saw the red flag come in. And, he's once again in that no man's land section, isn't he, Kevin? He's, not being hassled by Walsingham or Kevin today or, Sam Gaskell behind. And he's not close enough to be affected by everybody ahead of him squabbling. But if everybody starts, banging doors, getting into each other in this kind of top three for the podium, you're then going to see Philip Minard obviously bring that car a little bit closer into the fight. And by the time we come off pit lane, it could be, a 4-car train of Aston Martins as they go steaming towards Maggots and Beckett's.
Well, I think what we see here is Philip Minard being fully in the zone, which we know best as the John Dalton zone. Not fast enough to catch the group ahead, but no pressure from the guys behind. And yeah, here we see the John Dalton zone in full effect. But I think the big thing for Philip Minard at the moment is like he's in an Aston, the same as the guys ahead, though they might have gone for a slightly more wet setup. So if this track now gets that little bit more wet, rain pours down a little bit more than it has been for like the last 5 to 10 minutes now, I think this race could really go towards the 255 competition racing, and especially, like you said, if that top three starts squabbling.
Certainly so, and of course the drivers sharing cars across the board. The top four, let's say the majority of the top 10, should we say, all in a duo lineup. The only exception is the number 71 of Ren Velton, still with 3 drivers to cycle through. The RCI Bentley, the 769, still with 3 drivers, and the number 73 Ren Velton Ferrari also with 3 drivers. So the dynamic will change. Again, drivers' paces will change. Each lineup probably matching quite similarly in terms of pace, so we don't get that sudden kind of drop-off that sometimes we see with the smaller outfits, of course, bigger teams. Ren Velton, Veloce, for example, able to pair their driver roster, perfectly to one another. Attributes and certain skill sets merging together, it does become a very kind of harmonious thing when you get that magical lineup that just kind of clicks across the board. So of course Whitehead shares with Fleischer. Groenewold can hand over to either Richter or Huben. Again, Valentin Barrier in the number 39, Abdulaze, we know how quick he can be in the right conditions as well, and still George Boothby to cycle through in the Ferrari yet. So still plenty of drivers to choose from, and you do really need to give the next driver a heads up into where the grip is and what to do, what not to do, as these conditions are forever changing. But gap across the top 3 now down to about half a second between them all, and this should now allow Philip Minard to close in as the dirty air effect kind of takes place, Kevin. And Sam Gaskell, I just noticed, is back up nearly into the top 5. He's just behind Aidan Walshingham as well, so really good pace in the number 45 Aston at the moment.
Yeah, they were lagging behind just that little bit, but here I think we see that change of maybe still going for the full wet setup compared to maybe something a little bit more mixed, where now that the rain is dropping, the Aston, the 45 Visceral Esports car is coming into its own. And they're able to charge at the 800 Ferrari of Aidan Walshingham. But yeah, this is all those things. It's like we know the Aston is good in the wet, but still it depends on setups, how the drivers feel whilst driving that car. And yeah, it's getting very close now. We might even see try and go for the inside, but Sam Gaskell thinks better of it and doesn't go for the inside into the loop. Because yeah, this is still a difficult overtaking position, even though it is a heavy braking zone. But yeah, if you go for the inside first, then it becomes the outside, and then it's still a difficult proposition to overtake. Now go down the Wellington straight towards Brooklands. It might still be just that little bit too far. Let's see if he makes a jump inside, but he likes to stick it behind the Veloce 800 Ferrari. So yeah, I think the more it goes wet, the more that 45 by Sam Gaskell is going to become alive.
Absolutely. So the first of the top 5 to blink, the number 255 of Philip Menard, just about gets it drawn up, I think, in time for that pit lane speed limiter. We'll, of course, keep an eye on that one. Let's see where the 255 comes out, although the top 3 electing to go for another lap. Walsingham also, Gaskell stays out. Kevin today, Verstappen, Berndt and Nürnberger still continue on their way. So really kind of pushing the 65-minute stint timer that we spoke about. We should expect to see all cars completed their stops by the 1 hour 55 mark. And here's the flurry of the kind of the mid pack towards the back pack. Of course, they can't go for another lap on time, so we'll see a lot of these drivers coming down the lane. Of course, lots of penalties as well, Kevin, to serve at the moment on the board to the left-hand side. So we'll see some drivers shuffling out of position once again. And you've been on the side of the stewards, I believe, earlier on in today's race.
Yeah, I was helping out the stewards before the red flag and slightly after to keep an eye on, especially the first lap, where it's usually a bit more hectic. But honestly, it's not been too bad with the amount of incidents. A lot of things that happened were just small things, racing incidents, no further action. And there was actually barely any incident that went through that was, egregious, shall we say. So the esports drivers today have been behaving very well. So yeah, that was nice to see. Though, as we do see some yellow flags there in the loop, as we now look at Julian Sauer in the Red Velden for future car. Now, just past the Club and Vale, going towards the Hamilton Straight. And here we look now back at an SG30 for Marco Vela, and that has to be for speeding in the pit lane.
I think he's cut the village section, Kevin. He's looped it around somewhere between kind of farm and Abbey Farm and village, and come back on, I think, but he's not tripped a timing gate. And I think it's such a significant track cut that it's been a stop go 30 instantly, unless I'm gravely mistaken. But we get a long replay here, so we see Kevin today going through. It's Christoph Verstappen, next car up into village, fires the Bentley towards the inside. Ren Velten into the back, and there's a concertina effect. That's the 111 Aston Martin. That's the BF Racing Mustang involved as well in that one. Drivers go scattering. The number 46 waits for a while for everybody to come back. Gets back underway again, but doesn't do what I thought he would have done. That's very strange. It must have been already on the pit stop then. We can only assume on that one. Just coming to my timing board, and yeah, he did come down the lane, lap 29. So I can only imagine it's that has speared up on our board as the top 3 head out of the pit lane. Luke Whitehead, of course, was your race leader, still is the race leader. Ren Velten chasing down, and the sister Veloce car as well on that one. So driver lineups expected to change. We'll see the live driver down in the bottom right hand side. The left hand side will only update once we've got to the end of the hangar straight to confirm that. So Valentin Barrier is inside the number 39. That is for definite there. Already sticking to the right hand side of the track, Kevin. That's interesting. I'm wondering, did the number 39 take a set of wet tyres? Because if so, it's not going to be wet enough yet for those sets of Pirellis. Whitehead stays in the number 55. Huben takes over the number 71. And just trying to spot the sidewalls as we come through here. The number 39 is certainly on wet, but I think that call is far too early at the moment. Track status is still only greasy.
Well, it depends a little bit on what you want to achieve as a team, and maybe looking at what you think will happen, looking at what was in the practice servers and what was happening before the red flag. I see, yeah, both P2 and P3 for sure on wet tyres. I'm not too sure. I haven't fully seen the 55, whether they're on slicks or dries. I've just been told they are also on wets. So I think all these top 3 teams have decided, like, yeah, now is the time to go, because even though the track being greasy, it's still the best for the slick tires. If you wait that bit too long and it goes to damp and you need to pit again and you're going to have like that extra pit stop that you need to do, that's going to hemorrhage you even more. So what they might have done is slightly under pressure their wet tires right now, try and get as much like puddles, water on the tires to cool them down, and yeah, hold out until more rain falls and the track goes to damp and wet, and yeah, basically just avoid that extra pit stop, which I think that they believe will be the better option.
Yeah, just doing some spying across the board on Twitch at the moment. Luke Whitehead's tyres certainly screaming out in pain. The man in your screen at the moment, George Boothby, his tyres equally in a horrific state. So I think if they can keep the tyre alive, at least it's going to be maybe the right call when it does come into the magical window. However, at the moment, not looking too good on these heads-up displays. Luke Whitehead nearly at 34 psi across the board, and every single tyre is pretty much red. So going to be praying that this rain gets a lot heavier very shortly. Otherwise, I think we could be in risk of seeing these guys coming down the lane a second time in this stint, because we know that esports drivers aren't always the easiest on their kind of inputs. Luke Whitehead turned up the TC already to 2 of 8, tweaking around with some more as he comes through the slower sections. George Boothby equally using TC as well, and everybody kind of knows at the moment that TC isn't really the meta, so these guys really trying to keep these tyres alive at the moment, and it's just not happening. It's just not wet enough to bring those temperatures down. All the tread blocks are going to kind of wear away across the tyre, and I think an overpressured set of dries would certainly be the better call at the moment. But like you say, Kevin, you don't want to be doing that kind of double pit stop and everybody trying to find standing water, and I think everybody's blinked a little bit too early. Remember, tyres can burst as we see the 595 coming back to the pit lane. Drive-through penalty for them, escaping to the garage. So maybe day done for Reinders in that car, just not being able to see maybe a comeback from that penalty. But tyres can burst, Kevin, and this could be the race that we might see the majority of the field having that happen to them.
Yeah, it also depends on how long these greasy track conditions will exist. And even if you look at the weather forecast that you see the top right-hand side of the screen, like the rain isn't going to be that much. Even though it does say it will increase in 30 minutes, it's still light rain. So with what you're saying with Luke Whitehead having his tyre pressures already at 34 psi, I still think that might be too high for when we get to those wetter conditions in 10 to 30 minutes time. As we just seen an overtake here, that was quite the move. I think, actually no, Boothby was able to keep that position, but it was quite the defense there. As Stubenval tried to go around the outside, but Boothby was able to keep that inside, keep that P5 position for now. Though Justin now has to think about, is this the smart thing to do to try and push Boothby to get that overtake? Because if they're fighting too much, they'll only hemorrhage time, and that top 4 can get away from them. So yeah, it could be a bit on both on Justin or George, whether they want to fight this that much. But at the moment, it seems like George is set on defending that P5 for all that he's worth.
Yeah, absolutely so. And Boothby, a recognised name now in the Veloce camp, and it looks like giving up the position to the Aztec car. I was right on that one. Boothby pulling off to the left-hand side, letting Stubenrauch through, maybe just thinking he can work with the number 45 Aston just to pull himself along towards the back end of Abdulaziz. Of course, just up the road, 2.6 seconds to the good through the last timing gate they went. George Boothby a bit under the weather as well, so from all of us at RCI, we hope you get better soon. And kudos to racing while under the weather, Kevin. It's certainly not an easy thing to do, especially at this high level, representing Veloce in a paid tournament with prize winnings on the line, but still showing up and still giving 100%. And he really doesn't look too good on his face cam, bless George Boothby. But I hope he gets over whatever he's suffering.
Yeah, under the weather, in the weather, Yeah, really a trooper for pulling through. But yeah, this is what you see with these guys. It's like even if they're not feeling 100%, they will always give 100%. So yeah, that's all. Like you said, kudos to them for still being out here driving as well as they can. So we see two different fights going on now within the same screen. We've got a side-by-side behind this 179 from MGITJ setups with Luca Lozio behind the wheel. Still very close together. Currently wondering, okay, yeah, the two cars behind of Kreuzelberg and Magnani have figured out where they want to be, though we do see that fight continuing now in towards Stowe as we keep a watch on the 179 fighting with Rech in the 72 Ferrari. Seems like these two are not too sure whether they want to be fighting each other right now or actually fight for a position, or just like, yeah, it's fine, because how close they are, you do think that one of them would go for a move either defensive or offensive. So as they go down to Hamilton Straight. Yeah, for you, John, if you were in this position like Luca Lozio is right now, do you think you'd stick behind, or in one of these heavier braking zones go for the overtake? Because he is very close.
Yeah, certainly very close. But I mean, it's that thing, isn't it? You don't want to overcommit to the move, should we say, on the number 72, not get drawn up in time, make contact. Then, of course, the stewards take a look at it. Maybe one of the two teams complains. You're almost better kind of sitting in this like dead stalemate where you're kind of working together to try and get further forward. But from what we're seeing up here in the booth at the moment, it certainly looks like the number 179 is a bit quicker than the number 72 ahead. So, I mean, if I was Lozio, I thought I was quicker and I could make the overtake stick and then pull the gap, because again, you don't want to get through and then end up holding up the driver behind again. So then you end up with, the same thing, but vice versa. You're now the problem. And again, you start battling. That brings, Magnani into the fight. It brings Kreuzelberg in and Boosing in their cars. And before you know it, you formed a 3-4 car train because, neither of you wanted to work together on this one. So it's a tricky one in endurance racing. I always say choose your fights. It's one of those, isn't it? The 72 has to constantly watch the mirror to make sure there's not a lunge coming in. It's even more awkward when you're two different teams. If these were both Renvelten cars, you'd be safe in the aspect that nothing is going to happen, and up the inside goes Lozio towards the end of the hangar straight. The move is signed, sealed and delivered, and the number 72 gets off the corner a bit better. But let's see, can the 179 now pull out a gap on the number 72 Renvelten car? But as I was saying, it's one of those things, isn't it, where if you were both part of the same team, you'd be safe in the aspect, or you'd understand how much pace the car has ahead or behind. So it's certainly a tricky one, and Magnani now up onto the back of the number 72. The Renvelten Ferrari certainly struggling in these mixed conditions right now.
Yeah, and we've seen, if you had a look at the left-hand side on the tower, the 201 with Magnani in the car has been really pulling ahead, getting by Kreuzelberg very quickly the last lap, and now already on the back of the 179 and the 72. So I do think this Aston, now that the rain is going down a bit more, track conditions have gone to damp, so this is the point where the wet weather tyres will be more effective than the dries. And especially the Astons will fully get into the best window compared to all the other cars. So I think now any Aston that is a bit behind, but especially it looks like the 201 Gladius competitions in the hands of Lorenzo Magnani is really putting forward.
Yeah, the Aston certainly, like you say, looking better in these kind of wetter mixed conditions. Meanwhile, it's Tots Vince, the hacker, into the Williams Academy car, and he's actually on dry tyres right now, and the track has evolved at this stage to damp, so not the ideal tyre currently. However, the wet tyre should be coming down in temperature and both pressure currently at the moment, as all drivers are seeking the wetter side of the hangar straight. And just having a look towards Luke Whitehead's stream, the pressures are certainly down a bit, Kevin. They're still up in the 33s, but certainly down from those 34, 35s that we saw earlier on. So track definitely getting wetter. Tars Hacker, though, still making that dry tyre work behind the Coach Dave Academy car, the number 32, David Patel, currently at the wheel of that one. And they were a bit of a dark horse in the last round at Kyalami. They kind of sat just kind of inside the top 10, and then before you know it, they're kind of up towards the top end of the grid, mixing with nearly a podium position. So lots of capability in that car. And Tars Hacker is beginning to kind of form the train behind with the number 49 and the 138. So the 777 certainly having to get a move on rather sharpish at this point, or this fight could get very messy in the next few laps, Kevin.
Well, I think we can already see the move coming here. He does have the speed against Bertil in the 32 Ferrari, though going around the outside here through Brooklands is very difficult, especially if you want to try and up and under, because you once again get the outside here going towards the start finish straight. And yeah, it does seem like Felix has that pace compared to the 32 from the Coach Dave Academy. But yeah, like you said, with the other two Astons, the 49 and the 138, chomping at the bit, also wanting to get through, and now they are fully there as they go towards Mackens and Beckett. This is now becoming a very difficult proposition for Felix in the 777 Mercedes, because now if he makes a move or tries to go for a move and he's not able to make it stick, he's immediately got two Astons ready to take his position away from him, and yeah, that's 2 positions back.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So on that one, now the train has really begun to form, 4 cars deep nearly, and at the back, the number 138 of Novikov pulling all the way over to the racing line quite early to signify that probably not going to go for a move at the moment, but the number 32, definitely the cork in the bottle, should we say, during this fight, and the number 49 of Podens looking very close towards the back of that Williams car. And you know, grip levels ever changing. Kevin, rain top right getting heavier in the next 10, the next 30 as well. So Tars Hacker is going to go for that kind of brake pedal into one of these corners, and the grip will not be there that was there the last lap, and the ABS will be fighting him all the way. So probably very nervous every time he goes for that pedal. Catching a race replay here. This is between the VSR number 6 and the number 99 Skidmark racing car. Jan Drexler there a little bit slow off the corner, and just catching out the number 6, and Sven Poor now takes over the BMW as we see a bit of an off cycle from the Skidmark racing car there, Kevin. I'm wondering what the reason could be behind that one.
The only thing I can think of is that they went on slicks, and at this point in the race we're like, yeah, we are no longer surviving on these tires, and this is, I think, why the top 3 went for those wet tires, even though at the moment they're still ballooning, they're still burning. But yeah, just to avoid this possible extra pit stop, that's going to be key to winning. Though we do see here now that there's a little bit of a gap now between Hauben and Barrier. So the top 2 have pulled away, with Stubenrauch now closer to Valentin Barrier. And this has now made 2 different packs there, with Abulatsa also close by in another Aston. And the top 4, no, actually the top 5 Astons have already made a gap to George Boothby in P6. So we do see now this top 5 pack of drivers really pulling away from everyone else. It's insane how good their pace is.
Yeah, I think George struggling ever so slightly, probably sensible giving up to Stubenrauch in the earlier stages of his stint, and the Asetek Visceral Esports car now finds its way onto the back of Valentin Barrier's Aston. So Aston on Aston action. Meanwhile, Martin Lawrence onto the back of Zerbin in the number 44 Visceral car as well. Just done some kind of research into the number 99 Skidmark racing car on their kind of off-cycle stop. They pitted on lap 30 and only chucked in fuel by the looks of it. It was a 47-second stop from pit in to pit out, which signifies that wasn't a full service, but certainly was enough to come down the lane, drop something in the car, and go again. They then came in 7 laps later and did a full service at a 1:06 from in to out, as we see Martin Lawrence with a good run down the Wellington straight towards Brooklands, gets the overlap, pinches the Lamborghini to the inside, opens up the braking zone. The Lambo goes very deep on the brakes. Lawrence rather conservative, tries to do the old kind of switcheroo, the old up and under, gets a slightly better run into the final corner of Luffield, but no move, no overlap. It's going to be very tricky in these conditions to go the long way around in any of these corners currently on that one. But looks like the skid mark racing car came down, did the old splash and dash, as I kind of speculated earlier on with Matt, that you might be better off just putting fuel in, waiting for the tyres to come in, as we see a big slide from Zerbin in the number 44, and that's going to allow now Martin Lawrence the full overlap as they head towards Maggots and Beckett's. 2 into 1 doesn't go, and it's very nervy as both drivers go through the switchback nature of the corners, and very safe, very good space given from both drivers there, working together on getting themselves through. But as I was saying, speculated earlier on, you're better off waiting for the track to come to you, and that's exactly what the skid mark racing car has done. So they've not taken that early grip life out of these tyres. Of course, anybody taking the tyres about 20 minutes ago, Kevin, they've taken the best life out of these Pirellis already. So the wetter the track gets, the tread blocks are going to be a lot lower on the tyres. They're not going to clear as much water, so the grip levels for these top guys towards the end of this stint aren't going to be all too happy. Meanwhile, the number 99 brings in a nice fresh set of wets for the longevity of the hour, and they should be good to go until about half an hour to go or so.
Yeah, but it still depends on what they'll do for their final stop, because I think the only way to make this strategy work is if they only take fuel also for their last stop, which will be in about an hour's time at this point. Because otherwise, if they take another tyre stop, they will have lost. You can say they would have lost those 48 seconds by doing that fuel stop. But even so, if they just did a fuel stop, they would have taken 20 seconds longer in the pits than all the other cars, as Martin Lawrence now really gets close to the back of Serbin. Once again going towards Brooklands, still forced to take the outside line. There might have been some contact there, but now Martin still has to do the outside, and all he makes. Can he make it stick? They're side by side. Serbin just has his nose ahead, can get on the throttle just a slight bit earlier, as Lawrence also has to go onto the curbs there. We need to be very careful in these conditions because it's very easy to slip, but Lawrence has the pull as they go towards Copse, where we've seen a big accident in F1 a couple of years ago, but they do well here. And Serbin is still ahead, and this is going to be very close into Copse. Here we go. And Lawrence is now more side by side than last lap. There's side contact with just a little bit of door banging. They're still side by side going through Chapel now. And I think Martin Lawrence has made it stick. He's a little bit wiggly, side by side, going now onto the hangar straight. And this is one great fight, John.
In the background, though, it's the sister RCI Bentley, I think, on that one, getting involved. The Visceral car and a bit of an RCI sandwich. There's a rub as they go towards the end of the hangar straight into Stowe, and it's flying formation for the RCI Bentleys. I'm not too sure what's happened here, but one of them in the background certainly off the pace compared to the other. And now Martin Lawrence essentially has a bit of a rear gunner going on, Kevin. You know, you can't overly defend from a blue flag, but, you know, equally you have to keep your racing line and stay safe and predictable. So this could be perfect for Lawrence at the moment.
Yeah, especially now with the rear gunner of the other RCI car behind. And where they came from, I have no clue. They might have just come out the pits. I haven't had the chance to have a look yet, but that's Jordan Daly in the 799 RCI Esports Red. He can only like really keep this position if he's able to like overtake Lawrence right now, because otherwise we do get into our blue flags rules. But yeah, that was some move, like them going side by side all the way through Maggots and Beckett's, keeping it fairly clean. I haven't seen something like this in a while. That was insane, insanely good, and yeah, I want to see more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, it's what racing is kind of all about, isn't it? You know, for these moments where we see drivers going toe to toe with, you know, no contact, it makes for some spectacular broadcasting here on RCI TV. And if you like what you just saw and you want to get involved, head on over to the website racerci.com. It's looking a bit quiet on there at the moment, but the 6-hour community series is on there. You can have a mid-season sign up on that one. Of course, Saturday Night Owl, that returns not this week, but next week. The hiatus for today's race. They head round 5 to Zandvoort next week, and that championship is aimed at those that want to race on a little bit of a different time scale. So if you're not on kind of Central European time or around that area, this one is definitely for you. But you might find some racing at a more sociable hour in your location. But as I said, all events are on the website, racerci.com. There's plenty coming soon as well. I think there's a one-off endurance possibly in the pipeline. I won't say all too much more, but that is being talked about amongst event managers. And I think plenty of iRacing as well is in the pipeline. I've seen some promotional screenshots floating around our Discord, so keep your eyes peeled if you're interested in the iRacing camp. But of course, today is all about ACC, and these two here at the moment, Luke Whitehead still fending off Nicholas Huben, some kind of 30-ish minutes into this stint or so by now, and certainly looks like it's a bit of a stalemate almost, Kevin. You know, Luke is doing just enough to fend off Nicholas, and they're equally driving away, of course, from Valentin Barrier behind, who's under pressure from Steuben Rauch, and Abdulaziz, meanwhile, still lurking kind of in the background, way ahead of George Boothby, but closing up to the back of the 255. So it's a bit of an Aston lockout towards the front in these wet stages, and this should promote, again, championship kind of points to the top 5 quite healthily as they reach the midpoint by the time we get around to the calendar next time around.
Yeah, it's very close between these two. I think the way that Halvin is this close to Luke Whitehead, I think if he's able to get through, he might be able to get himself a little bit of a gap, but it still depends on what they want to try and get out of this race, whether they're happy to sit where they are and do that hard push in the final stint, or they think that if they go past, they'll have a harder time of staying ahead of Whitehead than they're doing now, with just not fully going for that move, even though here now at the exit of Stowe, they're very close together. We see a move for the inside, but he thinks better of it. That was very, very close with the nose of the 71 compared to the rear of the 55. But yeah, it really depends on what their plans are for this race. And even though I said I think they're quite happy behind Luke Whitehead's 55 with that, well, look that we just saw, we might see a move from Halben a bit later on, but they still have a good gap towards Valentin Barrier in P3, and then we got that group of Aston still pretty much ahead of George Boothby, who has now gained a second on Abulaze. So this race is not fully done yet. There could still happen a lot in this hour and a half, and especially if you look in 30 minutes, we're going to get medium rain. So there's a lot more to fight for this race.
Certainly settled in for the long run on these wet tyres, and you know, cars that have risked the fuel and then kind of coming, you know, back out onto the dry tyre rather than switching immediately to the wets. They're going to be in a much better place when the rain does get heavier, of course, compared to some of these guys currently on a beaten set of wets. There will be a little bit of traffic coming in very shortly for your race leaders. The back end of the field coming through Maggots and Beckett's right now, so that's going to be another factor to add in to these guys at the front. And traffic giveth and traffic, of course, taketh away. Some drivers fighting harder than others to remain on the lead lap, shall we say. And again, if we see any Renvelten cars along the way, Kevin, could we see a few team orders maybe coming in to try and make, you know, the Luke, try and make Luke Whitehead, check up a bit harder into a corner, and maybe allow Huben to sneak up the inside into the race lead. Of course, the number 71 Renvelten car did take overall honours at round 1, so they're itching to get another win on the board for today. But at the moment, Renvelten working with Veloce as they head through the field. Valentin Barrier's gap now up to 4.3 seconds. Steuben Rauch still hassling him, and Abdulaziz's gap down to less than half a second. So bit of a three-way fight forming here again. Aston versus Aston versus Aston. Everybody representing a different organisation on this one. So, you know, Steuben Rauch certainly looking like the faster, should we say, of these three currently. heads into the village section. No real moves going on at the moment. Of course, the hardest kind of braking zone, should we say, of Silverstone, but the 255 competition car looking very quick as they head through the section. Apparently, seems like we have some news in from the number 44 Visceral car. You may remember Sam Gaskell, very quick in these early stages, getting the car up the order as it gets very close through Brooklyn here, and just about managing to keep it very safe as they do come through. Contact was detected by our tool on that one, so it was close as Jesse Lee brings us a race replay here. Hooben tried to go around the outside to make it the inside, and a little bit of a rub just on the transition back across there, and just not ideal, let's say, on that one. But as I was saying, sorry, the 44, it wasn't Sam Gaskell's car, of course, that's the number 45, but the 44, Kevin Today at the wheel earlier on, having to retire due to a power outage. And of course, that's not what we want to see at any stage of the race, but it's almost akin, isn't it, Kevin, to mechanical failure.
Yeah, definitely. It's something you never want to see, because it's something out of the driver's control. Like, if you go too hard into a corner or in wet conditions like this, you take a bit too much speed, hit a curve and spin out. Like, that's on you. But whenever it's something like power outage or internet failure, something out of your control, it's just heart-wrenching to, just have to retire due to that. And especially, like, they were still in a good position there. To see the 46 has now gone straight to the pits as we see them go through Club and Vale here in the replay. Let's see what happens here. They still look good, and they spin out a bit, hit the grass there, spin out a bit more, and I think they just called it a day there. They had to wait at least for some cars to go past, and that's where they return to garage. So just going to have to be a little way to see whether they stay in a garage or go out again. I do hope they keep on driving, because points mean prizes, and every point here is going to be very valuable. But yeah, here we look again at Halben, still trying to get past Luke Whitehead. Look how close they are. It's not as close, luckily, as the previous lap, where they did have a bit of a touch, but it can only be a matter of time before Halben is able to get that that overtake in and grab P1 before we reach the pit stops. Or do you think something else, John?
Yeah, I mean, gaps up on Valentin Barrow behind 5.2 seconds now, just before they cross the line there. But Hooben certainly looking like the quicker of the two drivers at the moment, should we say. And, both drivers electing to take those wet Pirellis earlier on. So maybe Hooben's just looked after them a little bit more than Luke Whitehead has. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing the Renvelten tyres kind of come back in to this kind of mid to late stage of the stint. Small bit of traffic ahead. That should be no issue for these guys at the moment. Rain is, of course, getting heavier in the next 10 minutes still. So anybody that's elected to do the old splash and dash until the rain comes in fully a little bit more, that should prolong their kind of Pirelli tyres towards the end. About half an hour to go. We expect to see the alternate strategy cars coming back down the lane. These guys should be through in the next 35 minutes, if my math is correct. So we're about the halfway stage at this point. And it's interesting you spoke about points, Kevin, as Hooben gets very close. He's coming out onto the Hamilton straight, the number 71, certainly with better traction off the corner. I'm wondering if the Veloce car maybe dialed their setup more towards the dry end, whereas Renvelten maybe saw the bigger picture and thought rain will be coming back at some point during this race. But as you spoke about points, top 40 scoring some form of points in this series, and currently 39 cars still connected to the server. So the minimum amount of points you'll walk away from today will be 39 points, all the way up to 75 points for a win. And of course the win is what everybody wants, the prestigious top step of the podium. And good news coming in from the Visceral Esports camp. Number 44, Fabio Zerbin, back into the server and circulating around, albeit 4 laps off the race lead, but still admiring the determination right now coming in from all these drivers to keep plugging away at today, Kevin.
Yeah, for sure, especially if they had a DC like that, power failure, very good for them to go out, and especially it's not just if you stay connected that you get the points. Like, you still need to get that 80% of the leader in amount of laps in order to be able to finish. So going out there again and just putting in your laps, even though you're at the end, it's just good to do. As we now see P3 and 4 go side by side, and that is a little bit too much, maybe from the 255 competition, as they now have overtaken. Oh, and I think this is now Stubenrauch getting overtaken by 2 cars outside of Magnus and Beckett. So we now look at Valentin Barrier in a 39 Aston Martin for Veloce. And yeah, this is Stubenrauch, who really looked strong a bit early on, was catching everyone, passing everyone, has now just lost 2 positions in just a couple of corners. And they might have asked too much of their tyres too early on, and maybe for these next 22 minutes or 25, if you want to push the pit envelope, they might be falling back quite a bit.
Yeah, it could be a very painful next kind of 25-30 minutes coming up for some of these guys. The race leaders have extended out their gap after all that chaos. Nearly 9 seconds was Abdulaziz in the last timing gate, 8.946. We've just headed through another one out of the village section, so should be an updated gap on your screen's left-hand side. Still about 8.9, nearly 9 seconds. Valentin Barrier 1.2 seconds off the back after fighting with Stubenrauch, and I think George Boothby's gap has closed down ever so slightly. I think that was up into the 5-second region at one point. So the number 800 Ferrari, indeed. The number 800 Ferrari coming back into it and just spying again on various Twitch streamers. The tyre temps are crashing down at the moment. Pressures are back into the kind of happy window, should we say, between, you know, the kind of middle end of 30.5, somewhere around there. So tyres still a bit yellow, still not happy, not enough standing water, but a very stark difference to what we saw some 30 minutes ago when everybody came out onto a greasy track on a set of wets. And any ACC regulars in the chat will know greasy track is not good for these wet Pirelli tyres. Meanwhile, Moaning and Tartsvinzer Hacker find themselves together. There's contact there from the 777 Williams. Very well held from Moaning. Kudos to the Samantha Tan racing car. That's either netcode or slight contact. I think Moaning being an overseas driver, Tartsvinzer Hacker being on the EU server is going to have the slightly lower ping. So either netcode or Kevin just misjudged how long the nose of that Mercedes truly is.
I've fallen into that trap before, forgetting how long the nose of that Mercedes is. So maybe even for these drivers, if you're not used to driving that car that much, you might be a bit, cheated upon by how long that car actually is compared to all the others. But yeah, I think it might be a bit of both, like a little bit of netcode, a little bit of long nose for the Mercedes. But yeah, luckily nothing too bad happened there. Both cars are still on track, didn't get into a wall, no spins, so we can be happy with that. But yeah, Christopher's Poland still going here now in the 49 G League Esports, trying to get back at Tartsvinzer Hacker. And I actually at a loss for words, because like a lot of good things are happening here. Oh, and Houben has gone past Whitehead. We don't know when this exactly happened. Here we can see them go side by side, and this is towards the Hamilton Straight, and that's where they did it, out of Club and Vale. Houben was finally able to get his nose there on the inside or outside of that Veloce car, and yeah, make that move stick. So now it's going to be the big one. Can Houben now pull away? Because I think he did have the pace on Luke Whitehead in the 55 Veloce car. So yeah, that's the big one for me. Can they now pull away, or were they actually going at about the same pace and he was just profiting from the punching a hole in the air?
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? Whether you want to follow in somebody else's wake, or, get past and see if you can really kind of pull out that gap. And certainly Nicholas Hoopen done just that on that lovely long replay that Jesse Lee has brought us. Gap up to just over half a second already. They've not lost out too much time to the 2:55 competition car. That's still about 8.8 seconds to the good. Valentin Barrier, though, still 1.2 seconds off the back. Stubenrauch fallen off ever since his kind of escapade through Maggots and Beckett's in that last fight, maybe getting held up by the slower car just behind. Although still good pace in these drivers. And just looking to the last lap times from when Hoopen made that move, it was a 2:08.7 for Hoopen and a 2:09.4 for Luke Whitehead. But of course you can kind of discount those laps as both drivers were relatively offline, making it awkward for each other. But even towards the end of the lap, Hoopen still able to get under that 2:09 window. So maybe Whitehead, as we speculated earlier on, has just taken the best out of those wet Pirellis. Hoopen a little bit more conservative in the early stages, maybe just being able to prolong the life of those tread blocks. And in the background, George Boothby still lurking, 3.5 seconds to the good off the back of Stubenrauch, and Martin Lawrence 2.5 seconds off the back of Boothby. Big gap back though to Ren Velten and Otoki, that's 12.4 seconds, and then Tatsvinsa Hacker some 5 seconds down the road as well. So number 73 certainly in the John Dalton zone at the moment. The 777 able to pull away from the number 49 of Podens, and of course moaning in the number 38 after the brief bit of contact across the start-finish line. It's just occurred to me, Kevin, Tatsvinsa Hacker still out there on a set of dry tyres that have been with him since lap number 31, and we're currently on lap 50, and he's still making very good time. I mean, last lap time through a 2:08.9. I mean, in comparison, he's lapping at the same rate nearly as Valentin Barrier up in P4, who's on a set of wets. So, maybe dry tyres weren't that bad after all. As we head through Maggots and Beckett's, the number 32 Coach Dave Academy car, David Pertel still at the wheel, coming under fire this time. No, actually overtaking, Novikov in the number 138, the timing tower on the left. Doing me slightly dirty there, but Novikov still not giving up. Tries to go side by side towards the end of the the hangar straight, towards Stowe they will go, the Ferrari prevailing in this case. Moaning just ahead in the number 38 Samantha Tan Racing Mustang. So Coach Dave Academy going to be trying to pull up to the back of them in the number 38. All the meanwhile, Podens has broken away, 1.6 seconds to the good. If you remember, these guys were kind of locked in a bit of a four-way fight at one point earlier on in the stint, and just not having it at all at the moment. The dry tyres maybe just kind of a little bit more grip in them rather than the warm set of Pirellis on that one. But Jonathan Halama in the number 6 VSR car, making up a position there on the number 20 of Bergold. So VSR moving up the order rather slowly on this one. And it's about that time. I'm going to call a break in the broadcast very briefly, just so myself, Kevin and Jesse can step away, grab a drink, get refreshed and get settled in for the final hour of today's race. We're going to leave you, as tradition, with an onboard. No, we're not, apparently. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. With the number 27 BF Racing car as he finds his way alongside Jonas Koesvelds into the last sector. There was contact side by side there, and around the outside goes the number 27. So I don't think this fight will be done just yet. Koesvelds on the inside, still not giving it up as they head towards the first corner of Kops. So we'll leave you with this fight as we step away for a break, and hopefully by the time we get back, this one should be all wrapped up. But turn up your volume, enjoy the sound of the high revving Ford Mustang V8, and we'll be right back with you here on RCI TV. Welcome back, everyone. I'm John Dalton, joining alongside me Kevin Boss, as we, of course, take you through the final hour, just over, of the IMB 6 hours of Silverstone here for round 2 of the championship. Still Jesse Lee bringing you all the pictures to your screens right now. And as we come back, pit stops are aplenty, Kevin. Lots of drivers electing to come into the lane to get those last set of wet tyres in, while the track is still, of course, deemed as wet as per the top right hand side. So this stint should be pain-free relatively, rain easing in 30, but shouldn't in theory dry out. So should be everybody now locked in until the end, as we see everybody just peeling off pit lane. Still 6 cars sat on there as Martin Lawrence becomes your provisional race leader.
Yeah, we now have Lawrence in the lead, but they still need to do their final pit stop with the 799 RCI Esports Red very closely behind them, though they are lapped currently because of the different pit strategies that both teams are doing here. It's now going to be interesting to see what's going to happen, because even though conditions are going to increase and then lower again, so we could say, at least for the next 30 minutes, it's going to be about the same conditions, but we have a lot of different drivers in the cars now. We've got Bastian Richter in for the 71 Ren Velten, Hansen in for the 74, Fleischer in for the 55, and Gaskell is currently still in the 45. Well, actually back in, and that was very close there between the 74 and the 55 with Louis Fleischer getting that P3 there. As we look at the replay now of that overtake, you can see them come in, probably just a little bit too much of the curb for Louis Fleischer as they go down towards Maggins and Beckett, with Fleischer keep getting closer and closer. And actually, I think I was wrong about the corner there. But yeah, it was every little bit the 55 of Louis Fleischer was getting closer, and that was a solid overtake, just taking care of when the other car went wide and just taking that position.
Absolutely so. And Hansen in the number 74 that we saw just there, actually yet to make their pit stop. So maybe a bit of a tactical move from Ren Velten to keep that car out, just to see if they could delay at all Fleischer from the back of course, Bastian Richter, who now takes the race lead away from Martin Lawrence as the 769 Bentley comes down the pit lane for their final stop. Interesting note, though, Kevin, from our very own Ryan Gill, the number 45, Sam Gaskell, he reckons has pitted a bit too early currently. The car came down the lane, lap 53. We're now lap 58, roughly 2 minutes a lap. That takes you over that magical 65-minute stint timer, I believe. And Ryan Gill, very good observation there coming in from him.
Yeah, if our maths are correct, which we have known are not, because we're doing them from the top of our head and not using a calculator for some reason, that does seem like they need to have a little trip down pit lane just to reset that stint timer in order to make the end of this race. And yeah, depending on how well this stint goes, that might hemorrhage them a lot of places. Though what they might be used for is, to be an A2 one of the other Aztec Visceral Sports esports cars and help them to a high position. So it could actually be a tactical thing that they went in earlier to try and fight some of the other competition of their teammates. But yeah, only time will tell with that.
Yeah, time will tell indeed. And of course, we're under that magical hour mark now as the skid mark racing car, the number 99, so comes down pit lane. You'll remember they have run a bit of an off strategy earlier on. They pitted, came in for fuel only, went back out, ran the dry tyres a few more laps, then came back down the lane when the track had got wet enough to change onto the wet tyres. So the number 99 also pitting ever so slightly out of sequence. They will tumble down the order as they come back out roughly around P26, I believe, currently. And that was a full service, so that was a 1 minute 6 from pit in to pit out. So fuel and tyres for the skid mark car back underway. They will go, and they are, of course, way under the 65-minute stint timer. So all the way to the end they will go. The number 32 of Hubert Szymanski on your screen at the moment was a little bit higher up the order before we went for a break, and they've tumbled down ever so slightly. A bit of a slower pit stop than the first time by. It was a 1:07, lap 55 for them, and they now find themselves behind Makovkin. And of course, Hutchinson just ahead, and Lomi isn't really out of touching distance really either. 1.6 seconds separates them as the Ren-Velten car, the number 74, Raphael Hansen, comes down the lane. They will take their last mandatory stop. Tick that one off the board. Tumbling down the order, of course, bottom right-hand side will show you the live position as they come out of the lane. It's P18, P19 maybe if the Ford goes through of Gutslav, and I think just about the V8 has done enough by the time we get to Maggots and Beckett, and the number 74 will slot back in. G League Esports though, Kevin, up inside the top 10 just about, and they were just kind of creeping outside the top 10 before we went away for our break.
Yeah, they've definitely climbed up the rankings in this, you know, the little 15 minutes or so that we were not here for commentary. But yeah, looking also when they had their pit stop was just a couple laps ago, 1:07. So yeah, normal pit stop for them. As you see, Rafael Mario go in for Bravo Motorsports in 52. That was very close to being extra trouble, but they do have an SG30 already. That's probably due to speeding in the pit. So being that close again is only asking for more trouble. But yeah, with the G League Esports getting now into that top 10, and they've got a bit of a cushion down to P11, with them able to go all the way to the end. This could be a solid result for the number 49 Aston Martin.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. Just looking towards the Brabham Esports number 52. They came down the lane lap 55. It was a full service, and of course the stop go 30 logically should be for speeding in the pit lane, so quite considerable as they came down the lane on that one. They get back underway though, the number 52 back out once again, about P33 they should remain in theory. No other cars about to overtake them on the circuit map, so they can set their sights forward now towards the end of the race. And Leonid Makovkin still chipping away slowly at the Samantha Tan Mustang. The Mustang losing out ahead though to Lomi, 2.4 seconds now. That gap has opened up too, and it's always a trait of the Mustang, Kevin. It's quite torquey. It's, you know, instant power, naturally aspirated V8. As soon as you get to these kind of wet, slippy conditions, it really struggles to put the power down, and you know the aero of the car equally as kind of skinny. Even at its kind of maximum state, it's still quite a slick car in a straight line. So these conditions not optimal for the Samantha Tan car, but they're doing the best of what they can, trying to fend off that Aston Martin and maybe not waste too much time, because Szymanski just behind as well will soon be on the back if not. And Hutchinson already wide at Stowe. That nearly gets the overlap to Makovkin as they come down to Vale. Into club side by side they will go. I don't think he's going to fight this all too much, although making it awkward around the outside, and there's contact. The Mustang goes sideways. Szymanski has to take avoiding action, and the Samantha Tan car losing a bucket load of time, and that's not ideal when you're within 52 minutes of the checkered flag.
Definitely not. I was about to talk about how difficult that Ford Mustang is to drive around here, and especially in the wet. Like it is very quick in the straight, but it is a brick going through the corners, and especially when your aero is not as useful in the wet as it is during the dry, you struggle even more. And even though I was not able to race, my teammates Ted Edwards and Jordan Daly last week were struggling quite a bit with this car, even though we're still able to get a P2 in silver class. Like it is a very difficult car to get around, and especially once you get hit into the rear like what happened to Hutchinson, that's not going to help your day very well.
Absolutely. So big time loss there for the Samantha Tan car, and puts it in a situation with a chasing Hansen and Gutslav behind as well, so even more things to worry about as they get towards the end of the race. on that one. Out front though, Bastian Richter still leading Fleischer, 7.7 seconds to the good is the Renvelten number 71, and there's a big gap back to Sam Gaskell again, 6.6 seconds. And then we see a healthy gap back to Valentin Barrier, 7.8 seconds towards the number 39, and Philip Bridgster in the RCI Esports Bentley within 3 seconds of Valentin Barrier as well. Abdulaziz did have a penalty to serve in the pit stop. That's going to be from our live stewards, of course, cast their eye over the race, and it's for an incident on lap 47 into turn 17 involving the 39 and the 255. And stewards deemed it a 5 seconds for the 255. And 5 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, Kevin, but when you're in this kind of top area, should we say, of competitive esports, 5 seconds is a massive chunk of time to lose, especially for, just sitting there in the pit lane. There's nothing you can do. You can't really do anything to ease the blow. It's straight 5 seconds. Tough luck, basically.
Yeah, and especially if you look here at where Guglielmo Filippi is, if he and everyone around him had to suddenly do a pit stop and he had a 5-second penalty, then just look behind. That would drop them down all the way to 20th. That's like a 4-position loss. With how good all these drivers are and with how close the racing is through most of the track, it really does hemorrhage your position. And then having to overtake 4 cars, like here we can see them fighting Szymanski in the 32 Ferrari. If you suddenly have to overtake 4 cars more, that is really going to make you struggle. And especially now that the medium rain has hit, even though we now see we'll go down to light rain in 30 minutes, like the spray is there, it's more difficult to see. It gets more slippery on the curbs. Everything gets more difficult. So yeah, those 5 seconds are not just 5 seconds, they really hamper where you are on track.
Yeah, they're 5 seconds, into a train, essentially. As we catch a race replay here, this is from Finn Zimble and Jordan Daly, the RCI Bentley and the VSR car. It looks like Finn Zimble just getting a big armful of understeer on the wet curbing, as you alluded to just then, Kevin. Everything becomes a little bit more difficult, and especially painted surfaces, they become quite treacherous for some cars. We've already seen the visceral Lamborghini understeer in this very corner where we're watching Szymanski and Filippi go through earlier on. So front end of those Lamborghinis maybe not too happy in some of these corners, and Daly very unfortunate on the outside, finds himself with some contact, but both drivers keeping it in the straight and narrow, getting back underway, of course, on that one, as Jesse Lee might have just spotted something there on Szymanski, nearly losing it as he comes out onto the Hamilton straight in the number 32 Coach Dave Academy car. And it's a bit of a stark difference this time to where we saw them last time at Kyalami. They kind of sat around the top 10 region and then found their way on to the podium, clawing back ever so slowly. But today's race, Kevin, one of those ones that just kind of hasn't gone their way, and maybe the wet weather not being all too kind to the Ferrari, the highest placed prancing horse, P7 in the hands of Walsingham, Boothby, and of course Veloce.
Yeah, and especially if you consider that Coach Dave Academy car was around P11 at one point. Like they're now down quite a bit. Now we're looking at the first place Ferrari, the 800, now driven by Aidan Walsingham. They are not 5.9 seconds away from Abulazza, so things could still happen there, depending on how they drive. They also have the Bentley of Philippe Breccia just in front of them. Abulazza have the Bentley of Philippe Breccia just in front, so maybe if Philip hots them up a little bit, Walsingham can come back. As we're now looking at Filippo and Szymanski again, still very close together, going through Maggots and Beckett's and into Chapel, then onto the Hangar Straight. It seems like with these two drivers, there's some places where Filippi is stronger and some places where Szymanski is stronger, but not really a place where Filippi has the overspeed in order to really make the move. Or do you see that differently, John?
Yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it? It's a bit of a tit for tat fight a bit of a cat and mouse where, one section Szymanski gains, then another section Felipe comes back again. And just looking towards the lap times, they're relatively similar. I mean, Szymanski 206.217 last time by, and Felipe with a 206.157. So, very small margins between these two, and it is going to be one of those fights where one moment another driver's up on another, and then the kind of switchback goes again. So it's going to be a test of more consistency rather than kind of raw lap pace at the moment for these two. And fingers crossed it does kind of progress into a fight, should we say. Hopefully both drivers aren't just kind of out for a Saturday drive in the rainy Silverstone that we've got here today. And casting right towards the front, Abdulaziz closing on to the back of Philip Brejsta in the number 769 RCI Bentley. And the Bentley looked relatively strong, didn't it, in the early stages again when the weather was dry. The heavens have opened, and unfortunately the kind of pace has not nosedived off, Kevin, but it's certainly a lot slower than when it was earlier on.
Yeah, even though the Bentley is called the boat, it's not the best car in the wet. You just struggle more through the corners, and even though we do have the BOP, which makes them better on the straight line, in these conditions the Bentley does struggle. And there are other cars that struggle as well a bit more, like the Ford Mustang struggles a bit more. And then, of course, you can see all the Astons that just over-excel in the rain. So you can see throughout a whole championship like this, like if it's a rainy race, if it's a dry race, depending on the track, anything can happen. There are so many places where your car's then better or maybe slightly worse. But yeah, Philip Brejsta is still fighting Abulaza in the 255 competition, Aston Martin. So it's not a done deal. And if I know Philip Brejsta, like, he can definitely keep that Bentley ahead because he is one feisty defender.
Yeah, Philip can certainly defend, but against the sheer pace of the 255 competition, I'm not really too sure. It's certainly going to be a very close fight. Last time by in the line, it was a 205.9 for the Bentley and a 205.5 for the number 255 competition car. So we come across the line now. Last time by for Brejsta was a 205.6, and this time by for Abdulaziz was a 205.7. So nearly a second quicker there for the number 255 Aston. So Aston certainly the more favoured car, should we say, so far in the season. Top four being locked out by the British manufacturer, and Abdulaziz about to make that the top five on that one. It's certainly going to be a car that's going to be a bit formidable as we head through the season calendar. Of course, we're only round 2 at the moment. Next up in November, we head to Watkins Glen. Round 4 takes us to the Temple of Speed in December, also known, of course, as Monza. Round 5 will see us at Spa in the new year. That's January 11th, and then Barcelona to round out the season. That's in February. So still quite a few rounds ahead. Of course, BOP is done on a round-by-round basis, looking at various amounts of data. So although the Aston Martin looks strong at this point, Kevin, it could certainly flip on its head by the time we get to the end of the season.
Yeah, so many different tracks, so many things where different cars will be stronger. Like the Ford Mustang will like the longest straights of Monza, but then of course we have Watkins Glen coming up next month in November. So many different tracks, different layouts. But yeah, it is very interesting to see how all these different drivers, different manufacturers, different teams handle the different conditions, track configurations that this championship has to offer. We did have an incident come through from the stewards, was all the way back from lap 17, turn 14, involving the 24 and the 46. 10 seconds for the 46, though I don't see them on track anymore, and I've just seen another one come through. Lap 61, turn 9, involving the 38 and the 138. 10 seconds for the 138, avoidable contact. So now just going to have a look at this as we see McCoffkin on the inside. And this is the one we saw before with the Samantha Tan Racing Ford Mustang being hit in the rear, and that's a 10-second for the 138.
Yeah, very unfortunate to get a penalty this late in the game, but of course that will be added on to the race time at the end, so no further kind of mandatory stop, should we say, to make. Of course, the stint timer should take all drivers, bar the exception of the number 45, maybe all the way towards the end. If Ryan Gill's speculation is correct, the Visceral car will still owe us another stop at the end. So Makovkin's time will be increased by 10 seconds, which currently would shuffle him down past Szymanski, past Felipe, probably past the number 72 Renvelten Ferrari, and maybe even just behind the number 38 Mustang. But 41 minutes on the clock, Kevin. They've got to keep the pace up, and Makovkin can't really be delayed by Lomi. Again, if this, the Aston on your screen at the moment, there goes Makovkin just through the bottom of the shot. If Makovkin catches Lomi, they can't be delayed or, spun out. That's just going to be even more time, and you've really got to minimize that 10 seconds that's going to be inflicted when the checkered flag drops.
Yeah, and if they're stuck past Marco Lomi for way longer, like they might even slip down all the way to 20th, because Gutslav is not too far out of that 10-second window, I think. So yeah, even those guys, so Hutchinson, Hansen, Gutslav, like if they're being held up by Lomi a bit, or by Lomi's being held up by Naldi, but then of course Makovkin will still need to catch up to Lomi. But yeah, then even then they might fall back quite a bit. So yeah, at this point those 10 seconds are detrimental to their finishing position. But yeah, we've seen many things happen. Like in let's say our first session before the red flag, we saw many DTs come through for track limits. I haven't seen any come through so far in our second start. So we don't know where the teams are. Maybe they've learned from, let's say, session 1, where the track limits are in these conditions, or maybe we can see a lot of them come through in like these final 40 minutes, and that might throw the whole order into confusing mess.
Yeah, so isn't it? You can always, flip a race on its head almost when you get towards the checker flag. It all looks kind of relatively, I wouldn't say stale at the moment, but, certainly very big gaps at the head of the field. Of course, 8.4 seconds to the good is your race leader, Lewis Fleischer, 7.7 seconds ahead of the number 45, who we think owes another pit stop anyway. 7.7 seconds back to Valentin Barrier, and then the next nearest fight, of course, Philip Reister, 2.4 seconds behind, and Abdulaziz hot on his heels as well. So everybody's relatively spaced out, but again, anything can happen. Mistakes happen, God forbid, mechanical or technical issues happen as well. So what we're looking at now could be very different in 38 minutes time. But Marco Lomi struggling to find his way through Naldi in the Ford Mustang ahead, the number 27 BF Racing entry. This is of course only for P12 in the order, so it's not a high scoring position by any means, but still going to net themselves some points, and it's about 2 points difference between Naldi and Lomi on these positions. So P12 would net 38 points and 36 points for P13. So it sounds really minor, Kevin, doesn't it, at this stage of the championship? These guys fight for a handful of points, if that. But again, come the end of the season, by the time we head out of Barcelona, if you've lost the championship by 2 points, you are going to be kicking yourself. Round 2, you didn't find a way through that Mustang, and you could have been so much further up the order.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you always want to get as many points as you can, especially if it's this close. Like, yes, there are still 37 minutes to go. There is still a bit of time to get through, but you still want every point available, because like you said, if you lose the championship by 2 points, you're going to be kicking yourself. I've seen it happen to a few people where they were like, oh yeah, this race didn't matter too much, and then they lost out of a championship podium position or even the full win. So it does show, like, in a championship like this, where we have so many rounds spread over a long time, don't think for one race where maybe it's not your best race that P13 will do. No, you need to keep on fighting for every position, and that's also why all those drivers that have had some technical issues and are still circling around, it's very good for them to just keep on driving, because every point will count in the end for both Pride Championship and, in this case, also prize money.
Absolutely so, and I've just noticed towards the bottom end of the top 20, Hutchinson in the number 38 drive-through penalty for the Samantha Tan car, and somewhere on the Hanger Straight, I think a couple of cars ahead there, just heading into Stowe. There they are, drive-through penalty, so we can only assume that's going to be for track limits, and that's going to shuffle them down the order and away from that 10-second penalty of McCovkin, so likely not going to profit when the number 138 does drop down the order at the end of the race. Very unfortunate indeed. Marco Lomi, though, again, it's like we've just watched, isn't it, with Szymanski and Felipe. Of course, a bit of a tit for tat. One corner, Lomi gains, gets to the straight. Of course, the Mustang gains, and Lomi firing it up the inside in the village section and opening the gap almost. You know, there was an Aston-sized gap there. Let's have a look into the village section. Lomi goes very good on the brakes, hits the apex nicely, gets the kind of brief overlap. I don't even think there was an overlap there, Kevin, and now he went to turn in, looked in his mirror, and suddenly there's an Aston Martin coming up the inside. So Gladius really forcing the move there in the number 201, but they will go up into P12. 8 seconds to the good is the next car of Lossio, and I'm not sure that's going to be, you know, achievable in this late stage of the race. Of course, 35 minutes to go on the clock, and we see Just Drive Boys 999 coming down the pit lane very slowly, way before the pit lane marker comes up, and Yang cutting across the grass. Has that car run out of fuel? Maybe, Kevin.
I think, from what I saw from the flashing lights, I think they've been on their pit limiter for quite a while. So I don't know if something went wrong there, or yeah, maybe they ran out of fuel and they're quickly going to the pits, but they were also on the pit limiter for quite a while there, so I didn't see properly whether they were on it when already on track, or still on track before they cut into the pit lane, which also is quite a dangerous, or could be a dangerous move. But yeah, that's one where I'd like to know what happened there. If maybe we can spot at one point in the esports chat what happened there, or maybe one of the teams can tell us on the YouTube chat what went wrong there. But yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, I think possibly logically. I mean, it's going to be fuel surely at that point. Just looking at their last pit stop time, when they were last down the lane. Should we say it was lap 8 they pitted, took 1 minute 25, so that's logically going to be full service and some damage. They then came back out lap 38 and came back in again, sorry, lap 38, and now they pitted on lap 66, so some 28 laps later. I'm not sure how many laps the Mustang can do, but certainly it's going to be a bit of a stretch, I'd say, to maybe do 28 minutes, or 28 laps, sorry, 2 minutes a lap. It's going to be quite a lot of fuel. So, I mean, logically, fuel saving towards the pit lane, come in, pit stop, fuel, back out again. That's all I can really speculate at this point.
Yeah, but they still crossed from the track into the pit lane, and I just had a look at that pit time for now, and that was a 151.6. So that makes me wonder, did they crash the car somewhere? Did they repair damage? Because it just looked like they were doing a speed limit in the pit lane. So for me, this mystery's only become large instead of more clear.
Yeah, certainly a big mystery at the moment at Silverstone. So maybe we'll get the mystery machine out and fire Scooby and the gang on it to see if they can figure anything out on this one. But back to the question at hand. Ren Velton in flying formation here. The number 72 and the number 74 find themselves towing each other down the Hanger Straight. Just behind Gutslav there, the number 42. They're still within kind of earshot, but I mean, logically on this one, Kevin, Ren Velton cars, flying formation, they're not going to make it too awkward for each other if one car's faster than the other. They're going to either, yield the position or just work together to get to the end of the race. Of course, the next car closest to them, Szymanski, 4.5 seconds to the good up the road there. And just looking towards the last lap times, 2:06.2 for Szymanski and 2:06.1 for Orlando Rates in the number 72 Ferrari. And Hansen, who we're watching at the moment with probably one of my favourite liveries on the grid, 2:05.7. So the Aston Martin ever so slightly quicker. Could see a position change here, and then maybe Hansen is free to see if he can attack the back of Szymanski in the number 32 just ahead.
Well, you definitely think with them being both in the Rennbelten camp, they will either be in the same voice chats or they'll have someone, as we now see, Rates go well up the inside. There wasn't really a defense there, just taking as much speed as they could. So yeah, Hansen has now taken that position. But yeah, I think from Raats, yeah, that was basically all you could do with limiting time loss while letting your teammate through. That's probably what you saw right there. And yeah, I was just about to say, like, they'll either be in the same chat or have a team manager pop through all the different team chats to tell, like, oi, we got a faster one coming up, make sure you don't make it too difficult. And especially if they got the pace to still catch Szymanski, like, there's still 30 minutes to go. With the pace they have, they might even catch them. So yeah, anything to fight for there.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty still on the table, and definitely going to be some team orders on the go there. Meanwhile, Andrew McWilliam for the 777 Williams Esports Academy car finds himself in a bit of a sandwich between Niels Klinkmuller and Lucas Concretel behind in the number 49 Aston Martin. And just looking to the sidewalk, Kevin, I know I've been up for many hours already today, but is that a set of dry tyres still on that Williams car I'm seeing, or is that just to trigger the light?
It does look like I see dry, but ACC also has been known to have some glitches with certain cars. We've seen this 777 then on dries for this whole wet stint, but you think now in medium rain, the way they're driving, they can't be on slicks. They shouldn't have this grip. So maybe they are just tremendous drivers. Maybe it's an ACC glitch. But yeah, if they are on slicks, wow, just wow.
I mean, the lap time does represent a slick tyre, I would say. McWilliam turning last time by a 2:06.5, this time by a 2:06.2. I mean, Hongretel behind a 2:06.1, and Niels Klinkmuller ahead at 2:06.4. So I mean, if they are on dry tyres, they are showing some fantastic pace, and we're almost back at 1.7 or 1.6, was it, where you could literally max out a dry tyre in wet conditions and it would still grip and still operate as such. It's a very peculiar thing going on right now, but I mean, if it's working, then so be it. Tuts Spencer Hacker managed to stay on his dry tyres for a whole stint, and has progressed quite well, but number 49 behind certainly looking a bit more racy into these corners. And maybe the trick is just to kind of underdrive the dry tyre a little bit in these wet conditions, and it kind of yields a bit towards the corner speed. Round the outside into the club section goes McWilliam, but not able to get the overlap on the Ferrari. And maybe that is the difference of dry tyres to wet tyres right there. The Ferrari much better through the corner, but the Mercedes somehow still kicking it, Kevin. I don't really have words for this right now. This is really, like, perplexing to me.
Yeah, I still think the way he's driving, he can't be on slicks. I think in these conditions, the rain has only just gone down to light rain. Even though they are esport drivers, they are the cream of the crop. I still can't see them, like, getting the painted surface there on slicks. I think if you did that on slicks, you'd be gone. So something has to be done, or something has to be wrong here, because the way he's driving, I can't see this being anything but wet tyres, because I think all that's slowing him down is that 73 in front, because he just doesn't have the overspeed to get him in certain corners. But seeing how close he is throughout the entire part, even with that triple one behind, sniffing down his rear. This is some great driving, and yeah, I will put my hands up. If these are slick tires, you're a god. You got to follow her.
Yeah, I just want to put this to bed now because I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. So I've just DM'd Felix Tarsvins, the hacker, who is of course sharing the car with McWilliam this afternoon. He has confirmed they are wet tyres, and he loves it when the game goes funky. So squashing that rumour. Unfortunately, McWilliam isn't a god on some dry tyres. But yeah, our narrative certainly sounded a lot better in that aspect. But ACC just doing ACC things as usual, and the 777 looking to the inside again. They tried it last lap, but not with enough overlap this time. And in the background, it looks like Congratel has let the that's one of the Aston Martins a bit higher up, isn't it? I'm really struggling right now. It's yeah, Congratel's just let another Aston Martin through. So looking to maybe use the Sim RC car to close up to the back.
I think that's the 111 at
Oh, it was the 111, wasn't it? I'm confusing myself here. Yeah, absolutely. The 111, no livery in the background for the Dynamic Motorsports car, and Congratel, the number 49 in the fluoro yellow and grey car. Thank you very much there, Jesse, for flicking the timing tower over on that one. So this is about to become a three-way fight for essentially P8. Niels Klinkmuller, a bit of a cork in the bottle almost, Kevin, and William certainly does look a bit more kind of racy, a bit more competitive behind him. Just, of course, the last lap's 206.5 for both drivers, and Congratel a 206 flat. So the Aston Martin half a second quicker last time by. Of course, we're just coming over the line now. And Niels Klinkmuller a 206.3, McWilliam a 206.3, and Congratel a 205.9. So the number 49 looking very quick indeed. It's all very well catching though, Kevin. We've seen it time and time again. Drivers catching up to one another, but it's making the pass that is the truly difficult bit here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the problem. What we've seen for McWilliam in those last couple of laps, like he definitely has the pace, he just can't overtake. But now, as you have said, like we see people catching up, and now Makovkin has caught the back of Naldi, who has been overtaken by Lomi. So that finally happened as well. But now Makovkin does get into that realm of being behind that Ford Mustang. Maybe not having the pace to get them in certain corners, especially after a longer straight, might be a bit more difficult. And then that 10-second penalty will become very, very dangerous for their position, even though now they would only go down to, I'd say only, but still, it's a massive loss down to P19, perhaps with, or actually, maybe down to P17 at this point in time. But yeah, if they get hold up by Naldi here, they could drop down as far as P19, I think.
Big slide there from Makovkin as he came out of the club section onto the Hamilton straight, really pushing the limits of the CRT Pro car. Number 138 really needs to find a way past Naldi in that Mustang, going a bit wide through farm, trying to open up the inside line, and Naldi's been passed here before by Lomi just ahead. About 10-15 minutes or so ago. Hasn't really escaped up the road at all. They've been relatively within earshot still. So Naldi still very much a present threat in the field in that Mustang. And last time by 205.7 for Naldi and a 205.6 for Makovkin. So about equal on the lap times. The Mustang is going to pull away on the straights. The Aston's certainly going to catch up in the corner and on the brakes, as we saw there through Luffield out onto the main start-finish straight they go. Of course, the GT racers using the alternate start-finish straight, unlike the Formula One using the Hamilton straight, as they come across the line this time by. Makovkin with a 205.7 and Naldi still with a 205.6. So again, it's a bit of a stalemate. You know, Makovkin can't push any more in that Aston Martin, and it looks like Naldi has just, you know, really looked after those Pirellis this time by. Kevin, not really falling off the pace, still able to match the car behind, but you can see there the difference in cornering. The Aston closing right up through Maggots and Beckett's, but right on board down the hangar straight. The Mustang, even with the hole being punched in the air, able to pull away just about from Makovkin to get to the end for Stowe. Again, Makovkin should close up on the brakes, and which he does. Jumps on the loud pedal, and now he pulls out again as they head down towards Vale. So again, different attributes of the cars suiting different elements of the circuits, but Naudi a little bit wide as he comes through the club section. That's allowed Makovkin with a much better run, but still not able to close up enough, and soaring at the wheel as they come out onto the Hamilton straight, and wondering if Naudi will be caught napping once again into the village section, like we saw just a few moments ago with Lomi when he managed to get past.
Yeah, but still, we see it's very difficult for Makovkin to get past, because whenever there is a little mistake from Naldi, well, we see a move on the inside, and does he make it stick? We only see now from the inside from Makovkin. We don't know how much room Naldi gave them, but they are fighting. Whoa, that was close on the exit there, going on towards the Wellington Straight. We see a flash of the lights from Naldi, not too happy with that move, as we now go to the replay of what happens here to go back into the loop. Here we can see the Mustang starting to struggle, taking the outside line, with the Aston shooting up the inside. See a bit of a wiggle from the Ford Mustang, maybe stopping their turn in to either avoid a collision or just make a little bit of way for the Aston Martin. But yeah, that was very close to the end, and with the flash of the lights, I don't think Naldi was too happy with that move.
Yeah, I'm not too sure he was either on that one. Makovkin getting loose as they came out onto the Wellington Straight, and somehow avoiding the front bumper of the Mustang in behind. Concredel, meanwhile, closed up to the back of McWilliam in the 777 Williams car, and that allows Klinkmuller ahead some breathing room into the fact he hasn't got to watch his mirrors anymore for